Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion, and I'm Bill Stone. And tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, hopefully we'll have some live viewer call-ins via Skype anytime that you want. We will have the weekly current Lancaster County, Nebraska virus statistics, have some commentary on the news of the day. We'll have a Star Trek review of Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 1, Episode 6, Terminal Provocations, and then I'm going to talk about reactors as some. And maybe give them some advice and tell you about what they are, and have you hop in at least on one condition where I'm going to be talking about something historical that happened, and knowing my general demographic, you might have something you want to say too about that. Hey, long ears, how's it going? You'll entitle me to my opinion. Well, okay, that's fine with me. SF, that's just another word for science fiction. I'm a fan from way back, and it used to be that sci-fi was a derogatory term for science fiction, so I'm just used to using SF for science fiction, so you'll see me say that. It's going to be kind of a science fiction night. I've got less prepared remarks when I don't really have any prepared remarks on the news of the day. I do have some prepared remarks on other things. Yep, Lost Gears, sci-fi. That's what we're going to talk about a lot. This is, of course, a live stream, so even if I'm not able to get to you via Skype, you're free to talk with me about anything you want, and chat is long as it's doing. You can ask me any question, political, social, that virus whose name I can't mention without YouTube ranking my videos and channel even lower than they already do. The United States Civil War, or anything about science fiction, fantasy, horror, superheroes, and other related genre. I'm happy to answer each and every question in as much detail and as truthfully as I can. There are some personal things that I won't go into, but pretty much anything else, fair game. I will get to many of my viewers as I can, with, of course, the understanding that really I don't want this to go much longer than 3 hours, because it takes it out of the soul body. If you'd like to call in to the show, I'm doing that via Skype. Since I don't want to give out my Skype information in public, I'm going to handle it this way. If you want to talk on live on Tales from SYL Ranch, send me an email at callin@sylranch.tv. If you give me your Skype information, I will then Skype you back. You'll then be free to talk to me about anything you want. You can disagree with me. You can agree with me. I almost prefer to get people who disagree with me, but you can certainly call and talk about anything that you want with me. So again, if you're interested in speaking to me directly and being live on Tales from SYL Ranch, send me an email at callin@SYL Ranch with your Skype information, and I will Skype you back. That email address again is callin@sylranch.tv. So, getting things started off here, got 4 people in, just kind of waiting for more people to show up, but because I'm doing that, I'll give something out that people are generally a little less interested in. I certainly don't see it on CNN or anything like that. I saw something today in the news about it, amazingly, that the APA picked up, and it's a factual item. I know because of what it is. So I often say on this show, nothing you see in the press is real. Nothing. It's listed down there, and I mentioned, too, sometimes that I have a very masochistic hobby of debunking the press. I've been doing it now for 40 years. It's at a point where the debunking part of it automatically happens in my head. I don't think about it, but I have done episodes where I sit back and I just debunk the press. Give me any story from any news outlet. In about 30 minutes, I can prove one of 3 things. That the event being reported never happened, that it didn't happen as reported, or when you take away a slick interface opinion, emotionally loaded language and things like that, you discover that the story has maybe a couple of paragraphs of real facts. So, arsonists burning up California and Oregon. Well, I don't know the actual cause for that. It's certainly a possibility. It may be that the way Civil War II has escalated has gone that direction. I don't know. If it is, it's certainly an escalation of Civil War II. No question about that. But the item nobody cares about nationally. These are the weekly. Let me get that stupid thing below my head. Isn't it? It's not below my head. Hang on. Lancaster County, lower 30. You need to be down here. Sorry about that. I like to have my stuff behind me rather than in front. So, let's see. Oh, come on. Well, again, it might be It might well be. We'll have to see. At the moment, I don't think we have any specific thing about it. And the thing about it is, California wildfires are not all that... sorry, I moved my... Oh, I see. Okay, well, I'll have to have it in front. Great, now I have no... Sorry about this, half a second. You need to go there. You need to go there. I'm really sorry. Cancer Valley virus. Go there. Well, I guess for some reason... For some reason, I'm not getting a lower third here, so I will say this as quickly as I can. Chroma key image? No. I do not understand why I'm having this problem with the Lancaster County lower third. Hang on a minute. Oh, okay, I get it. Have a sec. Yeah, my lower third is missing. Sorry about that. If I don't fix this, it's going to be a problem. Let me get my lower third here. There we go. Sorry about that. I like to have this up there, and I'm very sorry I had to sit through that. I'm a one-man shop. I only have me, so when something goes wrong, I fix it. So the background is hilarious. It's an actual place. It's an actual place. That is a cabin that exists on the land that is still in my family. There is no such thing actually as an SYL ranch. But this is, if there was one, this room would be out there. That's an actual real room. It is the living room of that cabin. So, no, don't worry about it, man. If you find the background hilarious, that's cool with me. As long as you don't find it off-putting or angering, and that's what we usually worry about on this. Anyway, our statistics for this week, I have it sourced in my description box. The source is a very good one. So we assume that these are accurate. No, you don't have to say, hey, no. Hey, it certainly could be a fictional background. It's unusual. That's part of why I have it. Don't ever say sorry for anything on here, man. I can't take offense at anything. Trust me, I don't take offense at anything. So, our number of cases this week, the population of Lancaster County remains approximately 319,090 people. It's probably a couple hundred more than that, well, maybe more, maybe 1,000 or more. That's from the last census, I think. The total number of tests done in Lancaster County was 63,069, which, given our population, is still about a quarter of the total population of the county. The total Lancaster County positive tests is 4,843. We're up one death this week to 22. And deaths as a percentage of those tested is 0.0349. The test as a percentage of positive cases is 0.4543%. And the deaths as a percentage of the population is about the same at 0.00689%. As you can see, the virus that I can't name is not much of an issue here, and thankfully our governor has decided to start lifting restrictions come this Monday. I don't know that it will help because our local economy has been destroyed by this. Some businesses are never going to come back, but we'll see how it goes. You know, there are businesses that I know of. There's a chain of convenience stores in this area called Quick Shop. And Quick Shop, the company stopped bothering with masks, even though our governor said that I always listen to first responder frequencies, and I'm getting a whole bunch of stuff this week, and I failed to turn that off. I'm getting a whole bunch of stuff this week that is based on all the fires that are going on in California. But our governor is doing the right thing, maybe at the wrong time. And as I say, Quick Shop as a company just stopped bothering. They said, fine, let them come into the convenience store with no masks. We don't care. Even though the governor had said that they have to. But, hey, you know, I think if you're a business, just ignoring it is a good thing to do. Scamdemic, Longgear says. Well, I think it's certainly a scamdemic, and I always have. I've said so. I think it's certainly a scamdemic in terms of our politicians being opportunist. This is something that, when you look at other infections, Spanish flu, for example, that was worse. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe in large population centers they may have done some of the right things, but out here it's just a nothing. It's just what's happened is the people have been terrified by the press's coverage of this. It's largely press driven, and so they've been screaming at our politicians to do something about a situation that doesn't really exist. And for my part, I have a mask. I can't get to a picture of it, but I have a mask that is a steampunk Halloween mask that actually does cover your mouth and nose. And so my doctor said, sure, wear that. It's a big plastic thing with spikes sticking out of it. I wear that around because of this. It's my way of being passive aggressive. Okay, if you want me to wear a mask, I'll wear a mask. But my doctor has explicitly said this is a non-issue. We don't care as physicians. I've gotten feedback because when I wear that mask out, people sometimes want to take pictures or take selfies of me. And they have said that their doctors, one guy at the grocery store I go to, he stopped me and said, hey, I see you around here all the time. And I say, yeah, I buy groceries here. And yeah. He says, this mask is cool. My doctor has said that they don't care. They just don't care. Medically, it's a non-issue. What it's been an issue for is for our politicians to take advantage of it and grab more power. That's all. Wear it. You want to see it. I can't wear it. It's in my car. It sits in my car because if I'm going to be going someplace and needing a mask, it's probably getting in and out of the car. So that's where it lives. Let me see if I can put in I can't put in it's very difficult for me to create another card like this one. What you're seeing here is multiple layers of things that go on with the way that stuff goes out via my software. Creating another one on the fly is difficult. I can't really do it very easily. Sorry, man. What can I say? I just can't put it on. I can't get to it easily. I don't want to interrupt the show. Maybe if sometime, because it sometimes happens that I got to go to the bathroom or something, and I put on a trailer. But unless that happens, I won't be going out to get it. If that happens, yeah, I'll probably run out and get it for him. But anyhow, so I have this mask that's me being totally passive-aggressive about this whole situation because I think it's stupid in Nebraska. That we've never had any serious problem with this, period. Obviously, the statistics tell the tale. Nothing, the closest statistic we have is about 0.5%, half of a percentage of if you've got it, you might die. 1/2 of 1%. That's how bad it is. So, sorry, dude. Again, last year's I can't really get it. If I could, I will. If it maybe looks like I'm running out of steam in terms of content, maybe I'll go ahead and create a card with it on it. But I can't promise anything because that takes time. Fixing the card that I had is indicative of only some of the layers. In order to get this to work like I have a layer here on my video that is for these statistics. I have a layer over here that's for the chat window because I figured what the hell I can do that. I'll throw it in chat. Then I've got another layer for this general lower third and another layer on top of that. That's the scrolling thing. I've got a layer in the very back that is the green screen, and I've got the layer that's just me. So it gets complicated just to fix that. In terms of news of the day, in terms of stuff that might impact what I'm calling Civil War II, because I think that's what it is, there was not a hell of a lot that was really attention getting this week. Now, admittedly, I did something this week that I don't often do, which is I kind of ignored it. I get to a point when I do politics that if I spend so much time paying attention to it, it starts to do things bad to me psychologically. So what I need to do occasionally is just sit back and not worry about it. There may have been some stuff coming up, and as Lasker said, it's entirely possible that these guys started wildfires. The thing about it is wildfires are really common in California. I mean, really common. They have them every other year or so. Just sitting from half a continent away, the news that I hear about their weather that anybody actually cares about in this part of the country, because who really cares about the weather in other parts of the country? Does it impact you really? Not much. The stuff that I pay attention to is wildfires and mudslides and things like that. And they alternate between those two things constantly. One year they'll have bad wildfires. Then it'll rain like crazy someplace, and they'll have mudslides and damage because, it's a natural desert. And there are people who live in the hills on some of those, and it negatively impacts their real estate. But it goes back and forth between this so much, it's hard for me to say, yeah, that's definitely for sure that the leftists caused it this time, that the rebels really caused it this time. Maybe they did. I mean, it's certainly possible. It would be a good year to do it. It's nice and dry out there, my understanding is. But in terms of it being, actually for sure we know that for sure these people did it, well, we don't. And I don't know for sure how to evaluate claims that they did. Again, because I constantly see this sort of, back and forth between wildfires and mudslides, and that's been going on my whole life. There ain't nothing new here. When somebody talks about it being due to global warming, that's nonsense. These guys have alternated between these things. It's like the big flood that we had here in Nebraska last year, the year before, just tons and tons of rain. Well, that happens about every 10 years. There was one in the early 2000s when I lived there. After I moved. It would have been around 2005 or so. Big flooding there. Another one around the turn of the century. You can go back to the 1800s and find pictures of this area occasionally being flooded. And, of course, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or Red Cortez, as I always refer to on the show because it fits. Red Cortez was first to pop out of the bench and say, oh, this is all due to global warming, and there's these people who will never rebound and all of this stuff. Well, in point of fact, people have insurance for this precise thing. And while it's going to impact them negatively for a couple of years probably, they're going to come back. They have before, they will again. There's nothing about that was related to global warming. It's just nobody really knows about it. Nobody hears about it. Like I say, 10 or so years ago, I guess it's 15 or so years ago, the last time I was around for it. I mean, nobody heard about the fact that it had flooded out all of Interstate 29, which runs parallel to the Missouri River, and it flooded out a huge chunk of that would come between, Sioux City or so, which is the border of Nebraska, South Dakota, and Iowa, all the way down the Iowa side through Council Bluffs, which is the city right across the river from Omaha, population about 1 million in that metro area. So it flooded all those guys out. There is a floodplain on the frickin' Missouri River, and if you build on that floodplain, you're going to have problems. And people have built on those floodplains now. But they come back. They always come back. It's just that nobody ever hears about it unless it's opportunistic, like Red Cortez did with it. But it's not global warming or anybody doing anything malicious. It's just weather here. But yeah, I don't really have a hell of a lot to talk about with respect to current events. Partly because I wasn't really keyed into it this week, and partly because I don't think there was anything that was utterly horrifying like deaths and stuff this week. We may have these fires as a result of it. Who knows? The timing is certainly good for it. Or it may be that just California is doing its usual thing and having wildfires. I don't know. So, I guess with that, I'll get into my Star Trek news. This is going to be more of a show that has more science fictional content in it than usual, and that's because my roots are in science fiction. I far prefer to do science fiction-related stuff. But unfortunately, because there's no escaping the woke, I found myself talking about politics a lot because politics no longer is limited over to the political spectrum. It's now moved out into everything. You cannot talk about anything, including science fiction, without some leftist coming down on you about how you're a fascist. And I had that happen to me. Some doofus on the left went into a multi-tweet rant about how I'm a fascist for liking Star Trek, the original series. That's how crazy it's getting. So I do a lot of politics, but I do. Hey, Jeanette, how's life treating you? If you're coming here for current events tonight, not so much. If you want to bring something up, I'll be happy to talk about it. But I don't really have a lot to talk about. I do have some science fictional things to talk about, but they intersect politics in places. So if you come to me for politics, I'd appreciate if you hung out for this stuff, even though you may not be interested in science fiction or Star Trek, because it does intersect to some extent. I have certainly discovered that the faction of Star Trek fans who are real fans of the current Star Trek under the producer named Alex Kurtzman seem to be among the woke. And I have a video, There's No Escaping the Woke. And again, it talks about how there's no getting away from these a-holes anymore. They won't just confine it to politics, it's everything. So I like Star Trek, the original series, probably better than the others because it's been with me for 53 years. I mean, I started watching it in its second season on NBC. So it's been with me a long time. That's probably why I like it better than the others, more than anything else. It's just what I've been having my whole life. So, liking the original series, but somehow that makes you a fascist to these new woke fans. You can't get away from it. You just can't get away from it. But occasionally, I do like to delve back into science fiction and Star Trek related things. Jeanette says, I'll be in and out for a bit, but when I talk, I'll listen. Thank you. Know nothing about new Star Trek. Lucky you. I hate it. I really do. I hate it. And I finally figured out. I wondered who the hell the audience was. Because in real life, Star Trek's appeal is due to some level of nostalgia. Really, it is. If you look at the original series, that was something that became something huge. And because of it, we got all this other Star Trek. But if you think about it, the first movies with the original cast were made because of nostalgia for the original series. The Star Trek The Next Generation and that era of Star Trek, which was overseen by a guy named Rick Berman, we called it the Berman era of Star Trek. The Star Trek The Next Generation originally was really around because people had nostalgia for Star Trek, the original series. So you get all of these shows that are really strings of things that owe their popularity back to nostalgia. And if you look now, like on Twitter and YouTube and stuff, there are people who dislike current Star Trek, which is being overseen by a man named Alex Kurtzman. The people who don't like that are spending a lot of time binge watching other series. So if you look at what they're doing, they're going to nostalgia. So you look at Star Trek as under Kurtzman, and it really doesn't seem like Star Trek. It seems like something that actually, kind of takes Star Trek and twists and warps it in ways that it shouldn't be twisted and warped as an intellectual property. So the people who don't like that are now binge watching everything. I've been binge watching Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise, which is not my favorite series, but I've been binge watching it because I can't stand to watch what's coming out now. I just can't. So one of the things that I used to do was reviews of science fiction, fantasy, etc. I like doing it very much, pretty much a bust. Very few people want to listen to an old man talk about science fiction. That space really is for the young at this point. I do analyses of what's popular on YouTube all the time. I'm going to talk about one of those things. And clearly, youth has most of the science fiction space. But I can't help myself sometimes. So when we have, as we did today, every Thursday, CBS All Access releases a new episode of an animated series called Star Trek Lower Decks. And we got Seasons 1, Episode 6, Terminal Provocation is what it's called. So I'll do a generally quick and dirty review of this. It's pretty bad. I would certainly rank it about as high as last week's, which is it's better than Episodes 1 through 4. It's about the same as Episode 5, which was the best so far. However, when your expectations are lower than dinosaur bones, that's not saying very much. It wasn't, at least most of the time, insulting to my intelligence, as it often is. But I still didn't laugh. That's my major problem with it. I don't find this funny. The humor is not that good. There are things that worked about it. The basic story concepts, there were 3. One of which was aliens attacking by throwing space salvage from a spaceship and its cargo that the aliens and Federation both want. That is something that could work. The concept of a malfunctioning holodeck training program, well, yeah, that works because hologram malfunctions were an overused plot device in the Berman era. The execution doesn't work for this, but the idea of it is an okay idea to do satire or parody of. Now, the idea of this badgie that works as a concept for those who remember the Microsoft Office Assistant and Clippy, the paperclip. It was exceptionally stupid and certainly worthy of being parodied. And it's something that I actually like, the idea of doing that. You have a holodeck that can make anything. Most people make, do traditional kind of electronic books that they play out and stuff like that. But there's no reason that you couldn't do a giant animated star. That sort of makes sense. I've always wondered, why doesn't somebody do that? So as a concept, it makes sense. It's just that the execution was bad, particularly with all of the blood and gore and guts and veins in his teeth. That can work, but it didn't work here. So it's the execution that was a problem. You have a third possible story idea, that a science-y thing has gone wrong and merged with a human brain with its machine. Now that idea, the idea of that would work because this is a very overused plot device in all incarnations of Star Trek from 1966 to 2005. So it's a valid enough story. It's just that the execution doesn't work. They're all concepts that we've seen repeatedly on Star Trek, and fans have debated them until the end of time and still will. We know there's humor to be had here because we have been making jokes at the expense of all of these various premises since 1966. They're just that overused in Star Trek. So anytime you have something where fans know it's kind of silly, or doesn't hold up well or something like that, that's stuff that is legitimately something you can parody or satire. It's just that the execution of it has to be intelligent, and this really wasn't an intelligent execution. Now, there's a don't work. I always classify things in 3 ways. Jokes that made you laugh, jokes that just kind of fell flat. And thank you, the brilliant Rich Evans of Red Letter Media. There is non-medy. Non-medy is a joke that when it's told, you feel worse after it was told. So you can be going along like this, and then you get non-medy. So that's non-medy. But in terms of what fell flat, I still can't figure out why a doctor keeps doing work of an engineer. That's kind of weird. Again, the execution of all 3, plot threads that they had there was not good. Nothing about it worked. Didn't make me laugh. There are tons of attempts at jokes that fell flat because they didn't have a proper setup. You set up your joke, you get the pieces of it ready, and then you have your joke, and it'll usually be funny. And mechanically, what you have to do usually is, in a joke like this, you make the joke so that the punchline comes just in time for the viewer to, just before the viewer is going to figure it out. It's something the viewer could have figured out, but they don't until just after the punchline. That's what you want to go for. Nothing like that happened here. There was incessant, high-speed quip making in all of it, and it isn't very funny. There has to be humor behind what's being said. It's like watching, frankly, Ghostbusters 2016. This dialogue almost feels as though it's unfunny improvisation like it was in Ghostbusters 2016. However, unlike Ghostbusters 2016, this stuff is actually scripted. So the show is largely rapid-fire funny quips or unfunny quips and callbacks to other Star Trek. And the problem with it is somebody actually wrote that. Just leave you with that concept. Somebody wrote something that sounds like bad improvisation. Ugh. Jeanette asks, why am I having creepy music playing? It's not creepy music. It's the background of the USS Enterprise bridge. I will turn it down. I don't want that to be a problem. So let me know if it continues to be problematic. There were moments of anonymity, as there always are. The leads, when they're making the sounds of the engine noises and stuff like that, beyond a certain point, it just didn't work. I mean, it was kind of funny at the beginning, but then it got crazy and it just didn't work. Other things that were non-MIDI, the leads having some kind of party right after the captain of the ship puts the ship on alert, and it's just to be a payoff for a non-funny joke about how everybody's ready to, and doing their best. It's just dumb. And really everything connected with that concept was non-MIDI. It didn't make me laugh. Jeanette says, better sorry. No insult taken. No insult taken. I am always happy to do better with, I'm always happy to take constructive criticism. If it's too loud, let me know, because I'm probably going to pull this out as a clip, or I might. So I want people to be able to approach it. So thank you for telling me. If it still needs to be dropped down, let me know. And not an insult at all. There were, of course, endless callbacks to other Star Trek. Now, there were two that really worked for me. When they're going to go steal the captain's yacht, a moment that didn't work for me, it's very, very much at the end. We have the key for the captain's yacht seen on a tiny keychain that has a little tribble on the end of it. Now, that works for me because David Gerald, who created the tribbles in his original series episode, The Trouble with Tribbles, was inspired for the design of the tribble after seeing a 1966 consumer-grade keychain available at many stores with a fuzzball on the end of the keychain. Now, if you didn't know that, then this callback may not have worked for you. But I liked it because it was an intelligent callback. It was talking about something in fandom, and it's a little bit obscure, so the people who get that are going to say, oh, that worked nicely. A good callback. Another one that worked was the fact that the ship, seen in the debris of this cargo, that they're, the stuff that they're trying to salvage, was a ship design that appeared in Star Trek, the animated series in the mid-1970s. So that I liked as a callback. What didn't work, there are too many to list. If the callback, again, like that one about the key, if that had appeared to be coming from an organic sort of dialogue, that stuff might work if you do it sparingly. It has to be an intelligent callback. It can't just be dumping things out, because most of the time these are rapid-fire, embedded, unfunny quips, and they ultimately just mean nothing. And there were occasionally non-MIDI versions of this. Oddly enough, the callbacks to Star Trek, the original series, particularly don't work, except for the two that I mentioned that did work with the keys and the design of the ship. At the end of any review, even if it's short like this, you have to ask yourself, is it any good? I would not pay money for this. BitTorrent! Oh, excuse me. BitTorrent! I don't pay any money for this, and I wouldn't. I would maybe give it a 2 out of 5. But you have to remember the scale I'm working on here. 1 is existentially, threateningly bad. You cannot watch it. It is so terrible. 5 is it made me laugh once. So you can see the bar is very damn low. So keep in mind that a 2 out of 5 ain't saying much. So that is my piece for a review of the most recent Star Trek Lower Decks episode. Wasn't funny. It never is funny. Some interesting concept that could have worked, but they executed it very, very badly. So for anybody who came to talk about Star Trek Lower Decks, there we are. Just wasn't that funny. I have some other prepared remarks on one that's a little bit different. I may pull this out as a clip to use for a standalone video. That, to be honest, part of the reason I'm doing this is interest, and part of the reason I'm doing this is purely marketing. There are a lot about what I'm going to talk about out there, and they ask a lot of the same questions. So when I see them, I'm now going to I'm going to take this out of a clip and point them to this as my answer to the question that they consistently ask. Hey, Shadow Man, how's life treating you today? This is, for my show, a day for science fiction and Star Trek mostly. I have I don't have a lot to talk about with respect to current events. You can certainly bring up anything that you want to, and I'll talk about it. But I don't have anything specific to talk about it, so I've got some other stuff that's more science fiction related. So let me talk about this, because it's a little weird. Reactors. These are one of my guilty pleasures. I now follow a whole bunch of them. Reactors are people that sit and watch movies or TV shows. They will edit it together so that they don't use enough footage to have problems with fair use. And by the way, Paramount's terrible on this. Paramount will grab everything, including what Reactors do. There's a pair of them, the Gallifrey Gals, whom I'm sub to, and they do Doctor Who, Star Trek The Next Generation, which I really like seeing them react to that. The reason that I have that is because it's nice for me to say, oh, look, they're saying the same things now as they did when the show started in the 1980s. Or they might get an episode that maybe I thought was cheesy at the time, and it didn't work well. But they'll say, oh, that's so good you could still say that today. That's when Star Trek is really doing its best job, when it makes an episode that has some kind of social commentary that's timeless. And there are a lot of those in Star Trek. That is 1966 to 2005. The current incarnation of Star Trek doesn't do that. It's one of the problems with the IP is they haven't. Shadowman says, the Cinerama Dome. That's where I first saw Star Wars for the first time. You and I are lucky sons of bitches. Me too. I'm going to talk about that. But reactors, again, are people who watch this stuff. And I like watching them. As I say, that what they'll do is they'll put themselves, they might have a piece of footage over here in the corner. And they will usually be, looking at it. I suppose they have to move in this direction to get your face. But they'll sit and they'll watch this footage, and they'll talk about it. They'll just have reactions to it. And for me, it's a lot of fun to watch them. I really enjoy watching them. There are reactors for just about everything. I like watching them because of my particular psychological attachment. And I'll I'll mention what that is. I don't usually talk about personal stuff, but I will in this case. Shadowman says, remember when the line went all the way around the parking lot? You and I clearly are two great minds thinking alike. I'm going to be talking about the pictures. There are now, the reason I like these, reactors range in age from tween to about 30. And I think my reaction is, to some extent, at least part of it, is the reason that these reactors are pretty popular. If you want to get on and start reacting to things, I'm going to have some specific suggestions. But if you want to get on and react to things, particularly what I'm about to talk about, it is a giant market. It is a giant market right now. I'm seeing reactors to the content, mostly science fictional content and superhero content. I'm seeing reactors for that, who went from nothing to tens of thousands of subscribers and hundreds of thousands of viewers to any particular reaction. And that's constantly growing. There is a giant market for this. If you can do this, do it. Problem is, reactors really have to wear your heart on your sleeve. I'm going to talk about the theatrics of that because there is a little bit of it. But you need to be able to wear your heart on your sleeve. You need to be able to have a legitimate emotional reaction to what's happening on the screen. Let's see. There are now, the reason I like these, for a variety of reasons having to do with my divorce, I did not spend as much time with my kids growing up as I would have liked. So I have this part of me that would have liked to have seen more of that. It wasn't anything that I did. It was just the circumstances. And so the younger reactors, because, again, they range from tween all the way up to about 30 or so. The younger reactors I like because I can vicariously put my children in their place. It is a question of, you come to see these reactors have essentially the same type of emotional reaction that you had to a film that you see. That's why people are watching them. And I like the younger ones, if I have some younger ones, and I do, teenagers that I've subbed to, because I can say, okay, this is like taking my kids, to see a Star Wars movie or something like that. I can put it in that perspective. The other reason I like them is probably the reason that they're popular, which is no matter what age group you're getting, teen, even lower sometimes, all the way up to 30. There's a target demographic here that is looking at them as if they were a girlfriend or even a wife in some of the older cases. When you're younger, teenager, you're watching these younger girls, and as you go through and you get older people, they start more watching the older ones. And again, as near as I can tell, the main reason is because they like to think about these people as a girlfriend that they might be taking to see this movie for the first time. So now, that's why I like them. I think the latter part of that is why most people watch them. But there are now, from my audience may find this hard to believe, but there are now millennials and post-millennials who have never seen Star Wars. They have, because Star Wars is such a big thing, it has become part of the public lexicon. If no matter where you are in the world, you probably know what a lightsaber is. You've probably heard of Darth Vader. You have probably heard the phrase, "No, I am your father." You've probably seen memes about that. Memes about Admiral Akbar, the "it's a trap" meme. You may have seen all this and had this in the background of your culture that you grew up in, but never actually seen the movies, any of them. Shadowman says, never seen Star Wars, that's bad. Well, you got to remember, it's like, 40 years in 2017 from when Star Wars was first on a screen. It's a long time. That is longer removed in time than 1930s Flash Gordon serials were removed in time from me when I started really liking science fiction. It is a long period of time. And it's hard to get millennials and post-millennials to watch older films. They think they're going to be stupid or dated or something like that. It's really hard. Getting them to watch something like The Godfather, Rocky, movies that are very classic. You go back in time to like Casablanca. Very hard to get millennials to watch that. So Shadowman says, same with real Star Trek. Yes, and I'm going to have some suggestions about what some reactors could watch in the future later on. But they've never watched Star Trek. Star Wars for the first time, or for that matter, maybe not watched Star Trek. They haven't watched Indiana Jones. They have never watched the Marvel movies. And that's as close as you get to modern age. There's a whole bunch of stuff in my lifetime that they've never seen because they're young. They're not, as I am. I used to go by Fandai Master, but now I'm just going by the usual science fiction name of Secret Master of Fandom, or SMOF. They are not SMOFs. They are people who are much younger. Jeanette says, please don't ban me, but I have never seen any Star Trek movie or Star Wars movie. Well, that's probably fine, Jeanette. I don't go anybody to that. It's not a cardinal sin, as Shadowman says. If you want to do reaction videos for it, now's the time. If you're between the age of about 12 and 30, you can be incredibly successful. You can be less successful than that if you're outside of that age range. Younger is just too young. And older is a little too old for YouTube's general user base. But you can still do it after that. I've seen it. And still be successful. Right now, that is a giant market on YouTube. If you just want to sit down and watch movies and have real reactions to them, they can't be acting. It has to be real. The sky is the limit in terms of reacting right now. So, I have, Shadowman asks, neither, how old are you? 50 plus. Again, it's no sin. It's no sin. I know lots of people that never see it. It's just that when you get down to some of these, you can term them kind of geek girls. They've done, what typically happens is they've done live gaming, or walkthroughs and stuff like that weren't terribly successful, but that sparked an interest in seeing these movies, and they've kind of looked at the space like I have, and know that there's just a giant possibility here for success. But they oftentimes started as gamers that went on to something else, and they had an interest in science fiction. It's just they never saw these movies. It's been too long. Shadowman says, have you heard of them both? Yeah, of course, I can't imagine she hasn't at least heard the names. Hang on a second, I can't see this. BWC, I think I know who you are, 1976. Nice to see you here. I believe that this is an old friend of mine. I've known him probably for 30 freaking years now. He says, one of my favorites is the real-life airline pilot that reacts to various airplane movies. Yeah, there is a whole space for this. You know, if I wanted to do a reaction, if I could do it, I can't. I'm not the emotional type for this. But if I could do it, you know, you could go back and I could react to all kinds of computer-related movies that I know are just completely wrong. Or I could, for that matter, have been reacting to Mr. Robot, a really good one that occasionally gets it wrong, but it is the best technical IT movie I've ever seen. But there are movies that hinge on IT concepts that I could be reacting to. But yeah, there's a guy who there are lawyers who react to, you know, things like Boston Legal. You know, Liar Liar, which is one with Jim Carrey as an attorney. There's a guy that goes through and walks through, you know, how that's wrong and where it's right. Jay says, you hate reaction videos. Oh, you're going to hate this part of the thing that I'm going to talk about, Reactors. I have a big chunk here on Reactors. But nice to see you, Jay. Also, a very old friend from the same place as Wolf Marshall Presnell, who's in here from time to time, and I believe BWC 1976 as well. Larry says, never seen original Star Trek. That's really sad. I'll give you at the end of this, towards the end, I'm going to talk about things that reactors could be reacting to but aren't. There's a particular episode of Star Trek that I'm going to suggest to them, and I suggest it to anyone at all who has never seen original Star Trek, because I know that an original Star Trek, particularly for these millennials and post-millennials, the technology is so dated that it jars them out of the moment, and they have a hard time watching the show. So I'm going to suggest an episode where that doesn't happen so much. Sorry about day, Arg. Shadowman says, Larry, there you're still in shock. As I say, there's a lot of them. I have been watching a lot. I've got at least 10 or 15 different reactors that I've watched for everything all the way through the original Star Wars trilogy, the prequel trilogy, Indiana Jones, other things. It's amazing. This is really a big space, and I have a whole bunch of them that I watch. I can I can do it for hours now. It's really guilty pleasure. Jeanette says, I've never watched one, never been interested in reactors. Not everybody is, so, and that's fine. It's good. You have to have watched the movie already. And for me, it's beloved movies, you know, movies that I've really loved over the course of my life. Jay says, why? What does that do for you? Well, I mentioned it a bit earlier, and you may not have been in. There's a psychology around for me on this. It hinges on two things. The first one is the fact that when they were growing up, I was not able to spend as much time with my children as I would have liked. Nothing that I did about that. It was just the circumstances of life. So these reactors range in age all the way from 12 or so years old up to about 30. And they're generally female, although there are male reactors. I can't really tell you what the attraction to male reactors is, but for me, it's two things. The younger reactors I can vicariously live through, imagining that it's like taking my kids to watch these movies. The older reactors are people that you can think of, for me, as potential. I'm much older than they are, but it's still okay to think of them this way, as potential girlfriends. You know, somebody that you might take to a movie. And I think that latter part of it is probably what drives attractions to reactors overall. You know, the younger ones, younger kids, you know, the tweens, teens, they can take these younger reactors and think of them as girlfriends. You know, you get into the 20s. Same thing there. Men in their 20s can think of these girls as girlfriends. You get a little older than that, which is some of the ones that I really like, although it depends. And, you know, older viewers can think of them as a girlfriend or a wife or something like that. That's what it does for me. And Jay says, well, I have my own guilty pleasures on YouTube and in podcasts. Yeah, oh, sure. I mean, this is one that has been an ongoing thing for me for some time. Again, because of that psychological thing it does for me. But I've now watched a ton of them, and I can give you some theatrical analysis of it. You know, let me look at my prepared marks here. Sorry. Oh, and then there's a reason I'm actually doing this here, because there are stories that people may have to tell, and you can call me to tell them if you want to, and be right on here. But I get the same question from Reactors. They have the same couple to three questions over and over again. And we can answer that for them here. It's why I'm doing this on this live stream. I've forgotten here, was it Shadow Man or somebody else? I have to look back in the thing. It was Shadow Man telling him about where he first saw Star Wars and the conditions around that. And that's a question I can answer because I'm constantly answering it. And so if you've got a story, even Jeanette, if you're not particularly interested in Star Wars or something like that, if you got a story surrounding it, knowing that the demographic of my viewership is a little bit older, throw it out there. This is something I'm going to use to try to get attention and some demographic view out of this. So I'm going to start attaching this to comments of YouTubers that I see that say, what was this like? What was that like? So I'm probably going to pull this out as a clip to do that. But don't be afraid to jump in. I will certainly call you out if you're doing it on chat. And you can, of course, call me if you like, and I'll put you on to talk about it. You can do that, again, by sending me an email at callin@sylranch.tv. Include your Skype information, and I will call you back. And that email address, again, is callin@sylranch.tv. Duty calls. Well, Jay, nice having you on when I can. Certainly watch me later on demand if you want to see anything more about Reactors, because I've got a lot. So, what we constantly get with these younger Reactors is a couple of common things. They will almost always say, tell me what it was like in the comments to have seen this movie, for the first time in the theater. And they'll also say things like, I can't imagine what that was like. And they have questions where they say, man, what was it like to not know, the big reveal about Darth Vader being Luke's sister, or not know that, Darth Vader is Luke's father, and not know that going into the movie that Luke and Leia are sisters. That's one, by the way, that they don't always have heard. But, of course, you can't get away from it completely. It's part of our culture now. So they've got questions like that. And, well, guess what, guys? I and my viewers can answer you. Okay, got to talk about the conditions of where we saw this for the first time. Today, Larry there says, you can't get young ones to watch 2001. Well, 2001 is a frickin' acid heads movie. I reviewed it. Both I and Harlan Ellison agree it's not really a movie. It is an extended special effects demo reel. Harlan Ellison has it from the horse's mouth that this was a mess and put together mostly in post-production. He has it from the horse's mouth because co-author, co-writer Arthur C. Clarke told him. I think it's a great acid head and stoner movie. I don't think it's necessarily a good movie. I'm an extreme minority about this, but I just don't like it. Hey, Shadow Man. So, conditions in the theatrical experience for this were very, very different in 1977. To begin, there was the theaters themselves. Today, we have these cineplexes that are gigantic, that have 15 movies playing, 2 or 3 theaters with something like a Star Wars movie, and then others and stuff like that. So we're used to these theaters that have these essentially small, chunky theaters, and their deal is they're going to get as many movies showing as they possibly can because they'll probably make money on one and not on another. And so that's why we have the theaters that we have today. BWC 1976 says, I'm not glad I'm not the only one that was confused about 2001, I'm assuming. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I don't think it's very good. Shadowman says 2001 is hard sell to kids who have shiny, explodey stuff like Transformers. Yes. Martin Scorsese got into trouble with the press by saying that modern, like Marvel movies, have ruined movies. I think he's kind of right. Marvel movies are a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, but they're not deep. They don't. It's like not like The Godfather. When Black Panther got put up for Oscars, for Best Picture, I'm like, what? Godfather, on the waterfront, incredible, deep, well-made movies? No. No Marvel movie is going to stack up against that. But by being so damned popular, it has discouraged studios from making new stuff that's kind of deep and has, real good filmmaking and things like that. Larry says, Stoners turned 2001 to that. It was never that to me. Shadowman says, true, Larry, I did not get to watch it Stone until about 10 years ago. Yeah. It was another movie I saw in a theater. I didn't see it in 1969. I saw it in a re-release in the 1970s. I saw that one in a theater, a big one like this, getting back to theaters. The theater experience itself was very different in 1977 because you didn't have these little small theaters. You had these guys, a lot of them. These are theaters that were converted from live theater. So they have a backstage area, the one here in Lincoln. They turned that backstage area into a theater-themed bar. But they were converted from live theater. They were theaters like this, you can kind of see it, where they had real, shows. They would have touring companies that came through. People would put on local plays and stuff like that in a theater like this. You can see this one's got 1 million balconies. So the theaters were much, much, much bigger than they are now. They held hundreds of people. The one that I saw Star Wars on was 810 people in that theater. I saw Star Trek the Motion Picture, where I infected quite a lot of people with the, or at least exposed a lot of people to the chickenpox virus in its most communicable stage. When there was a chickenpox vaccine, but people still do get it. And because the theater that I saw that in boasted a capacity of 800, and because in 24-hour period, I watched 1, 2, 3, 4. I was into my 5th showing when I got so sick I had to call my dad and ask him to come back. So it's 800 people. The theaters were packed. Times 5. I exposed roughly 4,000 people to that virus. Suguri 63, fashionably late. Well, hey, so that's cool. Shadowman says you saw 2001, 1969. Your dad took you to it. Read the book in 1975, and it made lots more sense than the movie. Yes, it does. Larry says 1968, Cinerama Theater was the best experience. 2001 was like a space simulator. Oh, I would love to see 2001 in Cinerama or CinemaScope, probably Cinerama, but I don't think they shoot movies in that anymore. But our theaters were huge. They had balconies. The one that I saw later Star Wars movies in, not the first one, but the later Star Wars movies, was a theater that I don't remember how many it seated. It was, what was the name of it? It was the Stewart Theater. It was at that time kind of a grande dame, theater like this one. It also had a giant chandelier that's hung down. So these are all converted from live theater, and so they look very different than today's theaters, and they're much larger. And they were capacity seated for Star Wars and all of the Star Wars prequels and a lot of movies to this day. But they were capacity seated, and for every single showing until the movie left that theater. Because at that time, you didn't have, home video. You didn't have any of the stuff that we have now. The assumption was that you would only ever see this movie in a theater, probably in its original run. Maybe, again, if they re-released it like they did in 2001 in the mid-'70s, maybe you'll see it in a theater then. But the assumption was, this is the only place, and this is the only time that you will ever see this movie. Maybe it'll be on TV in a heavily chopped up form. That was common then. So you went to see them over and over again because you weren't probably going to see it ever again. That was your expectation. Nobody thought we'd have home video. Nobody thought we'd be able to stream these on demand. This was, you watched the movie in the theater. So they were always packed, completely packed. Larry says local theater in Oklahoma City was Cinerama. That's cool. And the later Jeanette do definitely pop back later. Shanaman says, did I ever go to the original Pentagus Theater in Hollywood? No, I've never been to it. The only theater that I've ever been to in Hollywood was Mann's Chinese Theater. I haven't been to any of them in Hollywood. It'd be fun, I think, maybe fun, to go to like the grand opening or the premiere of some movie at a nice theater and stuff where they do those. But I don't have any way to have a wardrobe malfunction like the women on those red carpets often do. So we had these huge theaters. We went to them in droves. They were always full because nobody thought we would ever see this movie outside a theater again. Now, I went to see this at the Indian Hills Theater in Omaha, Nebraska. It was a Cinerama theater, and it seated 810 people. Let me explain what a Cinerama theater is. It was an experiment in widescreen filmmaking that pretty much died. And it was experimental because what it did was it had a circular shape. You can see the outside of it here. And what it did was it had a much wider aspect ratio. This is the Indian Hills Theater where I saw this. It has a wider aspect ratio, and it's meant for a curved screen. You can kind of see it up here. And it was so wide that they had 3 different projectors that showed the film. So it was really wide. And these theaters were very large. So this is a very big screen. And it's Cinerama, so it's curved and wide. And then, like I say, people went to this in droves. Lines were consistently around the block, wherever it was shown. You would have giant crowds like this. Again, partly because it was such a groundbreaking and different type of movie. I'll talk about that in a second. But also because we didn't think we'd be seeing this outside of a theater ever in our lives. Shadow Man says they've torn down most of the old Hollywood and replaced things with new stuff. Yeah. Super Guru 63 saw it originally front row at drive-in. What an experience. I've seen it at a drive-in too, not in the front row, but where I saw it for the first time was pretty memorable. I'll talk about that in a minute. Larry says another theater was strictly MGM UA theater, Bond films, stuff like that. Yeah, they used to do that with some of these theaters. They would only accept, they were either owned by or heavily controlled by a studio, so they'd only show movies from that particular studio. It was not unusual with these films. But there were always lots and lots and lots of people going to these films, going to Star Wars. There were always huge lines, there were always crowds. This is one, as you can see, is one, that last one was a line that went around the block. That was normal. I had lines with Star Wars, not only went around the block, but past, here it is again, past the front row, or the front of the line. I've had that happen lots of times. The thing about Star Wars is, not only, was it what you see today, you have to remember that Star Wars changed filmmaking itself. And it certainly changed the science fiction drama of a genre completely. It was a completely groundbreaking film experience. In fact, Star Wars itself owes its present existence to Star Wars. Had Star Wars not happened, Star Trek would have been a second TV series that I'm not sure would have done very well. But despite it being Star Trek and there being the nostalgia, I'm not sure it would have done very well. But because Star Wars was so big, Paramount said, we need a science fiction product. What do we got laying around here? Star Trek. Let's do a Star Trek movie. Where was I? So Star Wars was completely transformational. It changed movie making itself. Modern special effects, everything to Star Wars. Period. Special effects wouldn't even be a thing right now if it weren't for Star Wars. And it was groundbreaking. It was completely groundbreaking. It changed, like, summer blockbusters were not a thing until Star Wars. Star Wars basically created the summer blockbuster. It changed the way that filming was done in many ways. It was utterly groundbreaking and changed both filmmaking and science fiction in particular. Completely changed it from what it had been before. That's very, very unusual. Super Cruise 63 says the Reuben H. Fleet Theater in San Diego has a 360-degree screen. Pretty awesome to see shows there. They were one of the first IMAX theaters out there. If you get the right format with the right theater, It's going to be freaking amazing. Yeah. Now, because it was always jam-packed, when I went to see it at the Indian Hills Theater in Omaha, Nebraska, I was too close to the end of the line. And that meant that I had the incredible bad luck to only be able to sit front row center for this film. So we have the stage being set for my first watching of this. I arrived late. I was sitting in the center seat, front row of a Cinerama theater. And Cinerama theaters were large enough that the film was far enough away from you, even in row one, that it didn't create a bad parallax distortion. It's not like going today where you're just like staring up at the ceiling practically if you sit in the front row. It was still a good seat. In fact, it was a really good seat for this film. And remember, there were 809 other people in here. And the thing about that, go back to the screen. The thing about it was, the way the screen was built and the way that I was sitting, the field of view completely filled my field of view from top to bottom. And it completely filled my field of view from all of my peripheral vision around through the front and back. Completely and got my field of view totally. Didn't have to turn my head to see this movie if I didn't want to. There were 809 other people there seeing it for the first time. Some of them had seen it already several times. There was a high, hardcore science fiction fan contingent there. And that contingent was basically the same as modern fans. If they really like something, they will go nuts and cheer. And if they don't like something, they will be weeping in one voice. And everybody was seriously pumped, particularly the people that had seen it before. In the lines that we had to wait in, and before the movie started, you could hear them. They would be incessantly telling their friends who hadn't seen it just how awesome the movie was, not by spoiling it, but just saying, "Oh my God, this is amazing! You're gonna be shocked by this." And again, the audience experience of this was totally different. It was a shared experience that we don't really get today. Because we're going to this, for a limited time. Everybody, when it got exciting, everyone was exciting. It's kind of like going to a live event. It is, a live event, what you've got like a concert or something like that. Like Shania Twain, I've gone to see her. And a good entertainer knows how to keep the audience motivated and in, and what order to do things in, and how to, capture the audience. Films do it in a totally different way, but with this film, when we got involved in it, we were just cheering, we were crying. It was, everybody was doing it. It gets infectious. If you have 800 other people around you, what happens in the audience gets infectious. And it was such a good film that all of the audience-going experience was very, very positive. We all felt really good walking out of that film and amazed. So part of that is because of this giant audience we had. So. Super Crew 63 says, when Star Wars came out, I had to wait in line for 2 full showings. And I was there at 5 in the morning. The theater in San Diego had close to 1,000 people. Yeah, these large theaters. Dropper 2 says, hey, gang, was that homemade IMAX bill? Not exactly. It was just incredibly good bad luck. Because I couldn't get in a better seat. So then that's where I'm at. Huge screen, huge theater, pumped audience, 809 of them, possibly more. Fans then were just like they are now. If they can figure out a way to get in and watch it standing up, that's what they'll do. So then the film happened. Oh my God. Yes, Drop of Truth, it was better than IMAX. In my opinion, that was better than IMAX. It was the most amazing experience I've ever had. And it influenced me so much that for years after that, until the theaters started getting tiny and, bad seats, I would sit in the front row center on purpose to watch a lot of films. I know at least one that I can remember was Superman. And I went there with my family. And I said, okay, front row center. And they're like, no, we're not going to go sit front row center. I said, okay, bye. I sat front row center. I did that for years and years after that because this was such an amazing experience. It was as I say, totally filled my field of view. When they had the trench run at the end, I was damn near getting nauseous from, the motions of the camera and all that. The space battles were epic because they were filling my field of view. Sometimes I might turn my head a little bit to watch it, but only if something was moving across the screen. It was just totally immersive. I cannot describe to you how amazing it was to watch that film in a theater like that. I got incredibly bad luck. Good bad luck. Now, the theater was Cinerama, like I was showing before. But the film was not shot in Cinerama. It was shot in 70 millimeter widescreen. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter. It still filled my field of view completely and was just amazing. Again, I cannot really describe how seeing that movie in that seat under those conditions with a lot of fans, I cannot tell you how an amazing experience that was. It was not the same. You might say, well, it's got to be the same if you go like the opening of Avengers Endgame. No, it's not the same. It's the sheer number of people and the fact that, they're all having the same emotional reaction at the same time, because that's what a good film will do. It will manipulate your emotions. And because we were all feeling the same thing at the same time, and that many people, and cheering and crying and, everything, it was a totally different experience than going to it today. It really was a completely different experience. I should mention, some markets, including mine, and I should have thought of this before so I could look it up, but some markets, including mine, had another short film that played just before Star Wars. And I wish I could remember the name. It had some cowboys. It was a humorous satire on cowboy movies. It had cowboys that were not riding horses, but they were doing the whole thing with stop motion with real people. It was very funny. I'll remember it. I remember it was very funny. I wish I'd looked up the name to tell you what it was. But that played in some markets because 20th Century Fox thought that this was not going to do very much bank. They thought, well, it's an experiment. We'll just throw it out there. They had no idea what it was going to do. The industry in science fiction had no clue. They thought it was going to fall flat, or could. So they put this silly little thing before the movie because they thought, well, this will get the viewers at least the notion that this is not something real. But it showed there for a couple of weeks before it became obvious what they had with this. And I wish I could remember the name of that. Can't remember. If anybody does, shout it out. I'd love to hear. Drop of Truth says, in 1977, when I was 13, yeah, about the same age for me, there were two types of cinema goers, those that loved Star Wars and those that preferred Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You were the latter crowd. Yeah, Close Encounters, that's one Reactors out there should react to. There's very few people reacting to that. Very different kind of science fiction movie, much more intelligent. And the music, John Williams' music, is an integral part of the film. It's not just ambient music or anything like that. There is a lot of it, but his music is absolutely essential to the film. It's almost a collaboration between Steven Spielberg and John Williams, primarily. Shadow Man saying, hey, Drop of Truth, it was Families 2, Bill. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they were family. First time I went to it, I went with, no, not the first time, but one of the later times I went because I went and saw it a million times. I went with a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, and this will tell you just how transformational Star Wars was. When I walked out of one of the seatings when I had seen it with a good friend of mine, and he was a science fiction fan like me, the only thing that we could think of was he turned to me and he said, wow, this is better than Logan's Run. Because that's what we had to compare it against. There had been nothing like this. You could clearly see, that it was being heavily influenced by 1930s adventure serials like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers and things like that. It was heavily influenced by that, and nobody makes any bones about it. Lucas said that he wanted to make that kind of movie, but yeah, it was absolutely true that people went to it, and it was so different again that my science fiction fan friend just turned to me and said, "Wow, that was better than Logan's Run." that's what we had to compare it against. Logan's Run and stuff like that. Stuff that, there really wasn't that much science fiction that came out until Star Wars. And now multiple science fiction movies come out every single year. Unfortunately, they still fall under Ted Sturgeon's law. 90% of science fiction is crap, with the corollary being 90% of everything is crap. But Close Encounters was a much more intelligent science fiction movie. I went to both of them. I think I got everything out of it that I was supposed to on both of them. But certainly Close Encounters was a very different, very intelligent science fiction movie. And the thing that always amazes me most about it is John Williams' music and how it's really integral to the plot of that film. You couldn't have that movie without John Williams' music. It's just that integral. Let's see. Superguru63 says Close Encounters was awesome, but in my opinion, Star Wars blew it out of the water. Shadowman says, agree about the soundtrack for Close Encounters. Yeah. BWC 1976 says, saw Close Encounters a few years ago when Fathom Events brought it back to the theater. Such an amazing window into a time period that I only experienced in diapers before. Yeah. Older movies like that can be good too. Sometimes they'll be very good. Superman the movie, for example. It is a 1970s movie, and if you look at it from the perspective of what's very different, you can tell. It's a 1970s movie. Larry says 2001 got me to my core. Yeah, that's another one that nobody's reacting to. None of these reactors are reacting to. You should react to 2001. So this was nothing like anything that had come before, and science fiction fans. If we were evaluating it against things that had come out recently, there wasn't much to evaluate it against. It was completely new, changed the game in terms of both movie making and science fiction. And I got to see that happen in action, and I got to see that experience watching first time for the Star Wars on a Cinerama screen that was curved around, and I could see everything without even so much as turning my head. It was an amazing experience, better than IMAX is now. I've never had an IMAX experience that was that good. So for those of you reactors who might watch this video, because I'm going to pull that out as a clip, that's what it was like. All those big theaters, big lines, the reason for the big lines being nobody thought they'd ever see this movie outside of a theater. And some places, and I've forgotten which viewer had the same experience that I did, seeing it in a Cinerama screen, which no longer exists, and seeing it with a large science fiction contingent audience. That doesn't really happen anymore. Not on the scale that I'm talking about. You go to these smaller movies, smaller theaters, you get a bunch of science fiction fans in there. But not 810 of them all in one place. It's like going to a con, and having a big, big ballroom. It's the only thing that I can really compare it to in modern science fiction. Dropper Deuce says, I preferred the original cinema edit of Close Encounters. You need to long version of Dreyfus going nuts and the shock of his family. Yeah. It's just a good movie all the way around, Close Encounters. I certainly recommend it to anybody. It's a great film. And for me, the thing that always blows me away the most is how it's damn near an even collaboration with Steven Spielberg and John Williams. You could not have done that movie without the music. And of course, it's Maestro John Williams, so of course it's freaking amazing. I can still do this. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. I think. God, I used to do it all the time. Something like that. So I do have some advice for reactors because I'm watching a lot of them. I got to be upfront about this because some of the advice that I'm going to advise about when it comes to theatrics with regards to these reactors is going to piss off the woke because it's real sexist in some places, and I can't help it. Some of it is downright sexist. However, this is based entirely on my observations of some of the more successful female reactors. I wouldn't give this advice necessarily to the male ones because I just don't get what the draw is there. I don't get their market. I think I get the market for the Reactors. Now the big question, which original Star Wars trilogy film was my favorite? My favorite one is the original, what's now called A New Hope. And I have the current despecialized versions. Someone's gone out there and done an extraordinary job making what looks like a print of the film as it was released in 1977, without all the stuff that George Lucas added. Plus, he does a job of color grading, because they incorrectly color graded the movie. It was color graded very, very differently, so he's changed that back. It's an extraordinary thing. BitTorrent, excuse me. It's called Star Wars Despecialized Edition, and it's really, really good, because you can see the movies as they appeared on the screen, as opposed to the way that Lucas had fracked with it for years and years and then incorrectly color graded it. So, some of the things I'm going to say here will come off as sexist, but I'm telling you, there's no way to get around it in some of the theatrics. There's just not. And I can see what they're doing, and I can see why they would be, I can see why, what would make some of them better in terms of the theatrics of it. Because, make no mistake, everybody on YouTube is doing some level of theatrics. Mine are pretty obvious. When you got my lower third, you got, some other window up here. You got a chroma key image and a green screen. My theatrics are a little more obvious. And I have prepared remarks sometimes that I occasionally deviate from, like I'm doing now. But there's still a theatrical component involved in this. You can't do it without it. You try to be as genuine as you possibly can on YouTube, but you can't get away from certain level of theatrics. Despecialized edition is also on your Blu-ray. Just be aware, it's probably color graded wrong. It's a minor thing, but you can see the difference when you do it side by side. So, I'm largely going to give advice, restrict this to female reactors, because I don't find the male reactors as interesting or engaging. It's probably just my psychology. There are a few I've watched that are kind of interesting and engaging, but when I enjoy them, really, they tend to be more on the intellectual side, like film buffs, who will talk about the shot framing, the way a character is being developed, if it's effective or not. Things like that are what I tend to watch the male reactors for. They're essentially doing the same thing I'm doing. Having a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away been an actor, it killed me in terms of being able to watch stuff without an uncritical eye. I can not watch something and not see what's going on in the background to make something work or not. Camera angles, lighting, things like that. I can't not see it. I'm stuck with it for my life. I have not been able to just see it. So because I enjoy the female reactors more, it's given me a chance to look at them again with a very critical theatrical eye. And I can see some commonalities in terms of some things that reactors do that are very clearly a very conscious choice to do. Some of the stuff that I'm going to say sexist has to do with that. So keep in mind, it is a conscious choice. And again, I'm going to give you an example of how I use one of these conscious choices myself, and for a couple of the same reasons. It is a basic requirement for success on YouTube or any other theatrical endeavor that you have the following things. Charisma. You got to be young, attractive, female, and a gamer. If you have all five, you have at least a greater chance of success on YouTube, but never give up your day job. Being successful on YouTube is as unlikely as it is to be successful in any theatrical endeavor. Never get rid of your day job for a YouTube channel. Never. If you have some combination of these four, 3 or 4 of them, the probability of success goes down from where it is if you got all 5. You could very well be successful, but again, don't give up your day job. I'm going to tell a little bit later how I think reactors are successful, and how you can, if you're going to think about that, or if you are reacting, you can maybe take some of what I'm saying to heart. Cartoon version like Clownfish TV, have they done a Star Wars cartoon version? I'd be interested to see that. Your chances of success dwindle dramatically once you start eliminating things that you aren't. And part of the reason I'm sure that I am not particularly successful is, look at me, I have none of these guys. But if you don't have charisma, just forget it. You have to have charisma. You have to be somebody that an audience wants to look at just because it's you. And if you don't have it, you can't be taught it. You either have it or you don't. And every successful actor that you see on anything has some level of charisma. You cannot get to that level on films and TV without having charisma. Example I always like to use for charisma is Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, if you watched him, in his heyday, and you watched him on TV, clearly a very charismatic individual. Watch his matches, clearly very charismatic. You like this guy, you want to watch him, you want to root for him, just because of who he is, how he has this commanding presence. I went to see him in a tag team match with Hillbilly Jim against Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik. And Hulk Hogan was incredibly impressive to watch in terms of his magnetism. He really had this magnetism that you wanted him to win just because of who he was. Not because of anything he said, not because of his great wrestling moves, because he didn't have a lot of them. It was just because you wanted this guy to win. And by that time that I saw him, he knew how to work that crowd. That gesture where he goes like this, that's not just for kicks. That's because that was how he worked that crowd. I watched him, and the one that really struck me was Hillbilly Jim's getting the snot beat out of him in the ring. And Hulk Hogan would not tag in until he'd done this to all four sides of the arena and got the audience screaming for him to tag in. He'd be like, "Should I tag in?" Like that, just the whole theater and the whole venue is screaming for him to do. And he just really know how to work this crowd. Incredibly charismatic individual. Compare him with me, and you can see it's just different. Larry says The Rock, yes, who began his theatrical career in Star Trek Voyager. Dropper says, no, a cartoon avatar personality like Clownfish TV. Who knows what they really look like or what their age are. Yeah. But like I say, if you don't have charisma, you just don't. And when you don't, you get me. Here are some basic truths about female reactors. And what I'm going to say now is going to sound sexist for a while. Sorry, the woke. You can call me any kind of names that you want on Twitter. Just make sure you share my video that I said it in. Super Cruise 63 says, the 1979 movie The Black Hole was pretty cool too. Yes, it is. A little cheesier than Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but very fun to watch. Just actors to Maximilian Schell and Ernest Borgnine, Anthony Perkins. Yeah, until that time, the first live-action movie that Disney had done, I think. No, they'd done Song of the South, but nobody's re-releasing that now. BitTorrent. Excuse me. BitTorrent. Good actors. The ending is weird, and a little. If you're a little religious in a way, but it's weird, and you kind of have to go, why is that happening? Yeah, drop a truth. You can get these reviews and stuff that come from people like Mr. Plinkett, who I love. I love Mr. Plinkett. If you've never seen the Plinkett reviews, start with, if you want to really see the canon, start with his Star Trek Generations review. Go through the Star Trek ones, and then bam. When he did the review for Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, that's when Red Letter Media took off. That's when the whole Mr. Plinkett character took off. And the reason for that is these reviews are long. Like for any given movie, they're like 90 minutes long. And they know they can't hold your attention for 90 whole minutes with a review that is also very intelligent, talking about everything that I would talk about in terms of the theatricality of making a movie. It's very intelligent, but he can't keep your attention for that long on something that intelligent. So not only is it funny, but he also he's got a plot. His first review for Phantom Menace The plot was he had kidnapped a hooker, and Mr. Plinkett, the character, because Mr. Plinkett is a character that's played. He kidnapped a hooker and kept her in his basement. The second one he did for the episode 2, the hooker escapes. And in episode 3, the hooker comes back for revenge. And they end the movie, the review with the scenes of Mr. Plinkett and the hooker, Nadine. So they're really good, and Red Letter Media took off as a result of that. Red Letter Media is one of my favorite channels because they do intelligent reviews. Not the same kind of way I would do them, but they do intelligent reviews. They don't just say walk through the plot and say this is stupid or that's stupid. They do walk through the plot and say some of that stuff, but they get down into detail. Everything that Mr. Plinkett ever says about the prequel trilogy of Star Wars, I have had a conversation about at some point or another. Since it was released. So, Drop 2 says, watch Black Hole at my advice. Enjoyed Act 1 and 2, but Act 3 was loony. Yeah, not the ending I expected, that's for sure. There's a lot of parallels between The Black Hole and Event Horizon. Yeah, both the movies I've seen. Yeah, the only thing about Black Hole is, it's doing it without a ton of graphic violence and gore and blood and guts. And veins in their teeth. Super Cruise 63 says, do you remember? Yeah, this was a Disney movie and one of the first attempts at sci-fi live action. Yeah. Disney at that time was really known for, animated stuff. They'd done the Herbie movies about that car. But yeah, this was an unusual thing for them. I think it's their only, up to that point, science fiction movie released under the Disney name. Disney had not to that point directly released a film. Now, of course, they have all these subsidiary companies, but back then it was just Disney who was making cartoons and Herbie movies. So yeah, it was a big deal for them. Sorry. Okay. So again, I'm going to get sexist for a while, admittedly so for the ladies. But I tell you what, you go and watch all of these reviewers and female reviewers for hours and hours on end, and then you tell me what some of the more successful ones have in common. But until you've done that, shut up. All right, ladies, you have this window of opportunity. It begins when you hit puberty and ends at about age 30. Prepubescent girls are too young for your market, and over 30 is simply too old. It is as simple as that. You got a window of opportunity, and you can be incredibly successful. I have seen channels that don't take the advice that I'm about to give, and they do really, really well. There is a huge market for this. If you're interested in doing reactions, right now is the time to do it. Let's see, I'm getting back to my prepared remarks. So the reason that 30 is too old and prepubescent is too young. My suspicion is that men, like myself, like to imagine that this is their girlfriend, or as you get into later ages, maybe even a wife. What we are doing is living vicariously through you. And I'll just be blunt about it, imagining holding your hand or snuggling while you watch this movie. That is going through guys' heads. That's just the way it is. That's what attracts this largely male demographic to any similar aged reactor. What you always have to remember about YouTube, because I have analyzed this to death over the years, is that the main user base are tweens and teens. You get much older than that, and real life starts to interfere in the form of a job, car loan, mortgage, children, etc., and you don't have the time for it anymore. Now, if you're a teenager, your market is going to be guys a little younger than you through guys a little bit older than you. And as you age, so will your market. Just be aware that guys are complete pigs from time to time. And while at least 95% will say nice things about you, there's another 5% or so that you're going to have to just seriously ignore in your comments. Always go into it with the full knowledge that you will get pushback from somebody for some reason, and it may be nasty pushback. They may be complete jerks. Unless this kind of feedback is impossible to ignore, unless they're making a big mess of your comments and stuff, just ignore them. Just ignore them. It's irrelevant. They don't matter. There's some things you can do with your presentation. The setting, for example. I have noticed that the more comfortable that the reactor appears to be, the more comfortable the viewer is. The best way that I have seen this achieved very simply, and that's by having a specific setting. What you need to do is find a sofa to sit or lay down on. It helps to have a pillow, for example, handy with you if you're going to have an emotional reaction. Might hold on to it. I've seen women hold on to it when they're scared. I've seen them, putting over their faces if they get real scared about something, jump scare or something like that, or if they're getting emotional. I've seen that. Not a bad thing to have just sitting on the couch sofa next to you. Now, I'm not suggesting that you unnaturally introduce this prop. If you don't like having a pillow for emotional comfort, then don't have one. The key always in reactors is for you to be comfortable. There's just a couple of big keys. I would suggest don't use a green screen like myself. This is one of those instances in which you want the viewer to see a little corner of your life. What you show them in that regard is going to be up to you. I have a lady in her 30s with children, and she will do stuff like finish folding laundry while she walks. I have a couple I watch who make a point of dressing rather ladylike, who show a fairly uncluttered corner of their world. What real life looks like, who knows? Just talking about a space this big that you have to fill out with something that looks nice. You got to show on your videos whatever makes you comfortable, but take real care that there's nothing there with any identifying characteristics visible. With 10,000 views or more per video, someone somewhere is going to pick up on some tiny thing that you didn't know was there. And there is this weird 5%, some of which who can be crazy. Don't get yourself in a position where you can be doxxed or your identity disclosed if you don't want it to be, because a lot of women don't. They have channels and they won't give out their names. I've talked to some of them offline, and they won't give out their real names, even if it's somebody who they think is pretty harmless, like me. So when you're doing it, you may want to come up with a channel name that's sort of descriptive about what you do, but don't give out your name. It's not like me. I give out my name because I don't give a crap, and I am armed. So if somebody's going to come after me, there's a less likelihood that they'll even do it because I'm armed. But if you're female, good idea not to give out your identifying information. Yes, Dropper2 says, watch out for stalkers. I have seen two people, not reactors, who got into serious trouble on YouTube because their real names were out there. Me, I don't care, but I'm a very adult male who goes armed. I'm not too worried about it. And you can look at my viewership. It's not like I've got millions of people, hundreds of thousands per video, and people are up watching that. It's a good idea to set up some studio lighting. Now, exactly how you do this will kind of be up to you. You probably need at least 3 lights, but that will also depend to some extent as to what your surroundings can support. You may not be able to support 3 lights with that. Now, I have 3. One of them is my key light that's sitting right over my camera, and it's making this part of my face look good. I got another one at 45-degree angle over here and another one at a 45-degree angle here, and I've messed with these a lot so that I can get away without wearing makeup. But if you turn off one of these lights on the left or right, this is what happens. See, my entire side goes completely dark. Similar, worse things happen if I do this. Now the only light is coming straight in front of me, and I don't look exactly human like I want to. So, you may need 2, potentially 3 lights. Doing it the way that I do it, key light in front of you, 2 other lights at 45-degree angles. And frankly, I would like to get to a point where I can kind of replace some of the lighting on here so that I can put a blue filter here and an amber filter there, because that'll generally make you look a little more human. But I have fiddled with this a lot so that I don't have to use makeup. Ladies, you probably won't be able to get away with being a reactor without makeup. You need to put on some makeup, and I'll explain why in a minute. How you arrange the lighting is going to be up to you. You'll need to be careful to avoid any light reflections from furniture, clothes, etc. Very bright clothes will give you this light reflection. You got to be careful. It has to look good on screen. And the lighting alone may restrict the color of what you can wear on screen and what kind of makeup you wear. Dropper2 says, men should also watch out for stalkers if they're of the pretty marked dice types. Women are as nuts as men nowadays. That's an equality for you. Arg. Yeah. Yeah, but I think men tend to be a little more creepy. Maybe, I don't know, because I've never had a stalker. I did, oddly enough, when I was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, when I was an actor. I actually had two teenage girls, like 15, at one place where I worked as summer stock. And the only time that I had a lead role, because I was in the low rung of things, but I had a lead role in one. And these two teenage girls thought I was the most amazing thing ever. It was a small town. It was like 5,000 people. It was a college town. There's a college that wasn't in session when we were there. But it's a small town, especially in the summertime. And these two girls, they would show up everywhere I went. I went to get a haircut, there they'd be. I went to the pool, there they'd be. I was at work, they'd be hanging around that theater. I cannot understand how I got a couple of actual fans, at least briefly, but to give me a sort of a taste, you know, they made it incredibly clear that and I was like 19 or 20, so it wasn't so bad, but even so they were 15, and I'm not going to touch that. But boy, did they make it incredibly clear that if I wanted to have sex with either or both of them, I could. So I got a little taste of what, you know, real celebrities get, but I still don't understand how that happened. So, but they were harmless. You know, they'd show up, they'd practically stalking me, but it was harmless. They weren't going to do anything to me. It was just, okay, hi girls. No, I'm not going to have sex with you this time either. But you know, the thing is, I get how celebrities can get to be like, oh, yeah, I'll have sex with this girl over here because they're probably throwing themselves at them. I mean, these girls were throwing themselves at me, and I'm sure that's what real celebrities get all the time. So back to advice for reactors. There's also camera placement, and this is more important than you think. The camera has to be able, if you're a reactor, to see your face. Your face is extremely big deal when you're a reactor. You have to be able to have genuine emotional reactions. And the best way to do that when you're doing this on a screen is to be able to see your face. Keep your hair back in a way that's going to allow your face to be shown. You know, wear it up or ponytail or something to get it out of your face. It's really important. And the camera being placed to see your face is really, really important. It has to be that your angle of viewing looks like that you're looking at what you're superimposed to. So for, say, example, suppose what they usually do is they'll have whatever video they're reacting to up on part of the screen, and then they'll be reacting to it from the other side. So what they'll often do is put themselves at an angle, let me see if I can get this right, an angle about like this. You know, they'll have superimposed video in here and angle it about like this. Or maybe you can get away with more, you know, but you have to make sure that whatever side that you're looking at it has to be reflected on the screen. If you're going to watch something, then it needs to be the screen, the video that you're putting up over here has to match your gaze. You know, don't look down, don't look up. It needs to be matching your gaze. That's real important. And you know, the closer you can get it so that you can see all of your face, that's important too. It works if you've got an angle, because it looks like you're looking at whatever it is that you've got superimposed, because it looks like you're looking at a screen. If you get, you know, direct like this, that's oddly enough not as impactful. More at an angle where it looks like you're looking at the screen, but you have to have your lighting and your camera set up so that your face looks good, and your face has to be clear of hair and stuff like that. You probably have to put on some makeup. I've never seen a woman that doesn't. Let me put a pin in that for the Star Trek Discovery trailer. I can talk about that in a minute. Yeah. So I do something. Here's a trick, a theatrical trick that I have no problem talking about. But I picked it up by watching female reactors and other YouTubers, female ones. For me, the trick that I'm going to talk about, I do for two reasons. Partly because I am rather keenly aware that I put on some weight during quarantine, and this trick makes it look like I'm not quite as big as I am. The camera always adds 10 pounds. You have to always keep that in mind. And for me, I don't know what I look like adding 10 pounds, but I take whatever little tricks that I can. There's another reason women do this, and it's true of the female reactors as it is of many, many YouTubers, female YouTubers. And this is going to sound sexist, but you do this little trick partly to show your cleavage. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. I have watched too many female YouTubers here and in the fanish space, and I've watched them in all kinds of other spaces. They all do this, and I see it with a critical eye every single time. The fact that they're constantly doing it means that they're choosing to, showing off their cleavage. If you're not comfortable wearing clothing that would show it off, don't do it, because it's really, really important for your reaction to be genuine. If you're faking it, your body language will betray you every time. You know, I read body language a little bit, not a ton. But if the reactor is not having a genuine reaction, your body language will give you away every single time. And people may not see the body language directly like I do, but they're going to feel it. They'll pick up on it because your body language is saying this is not a genuine reaction to this movie. You know, not the overall reaction that you have to it, but in any given moment. Your body language will betray you every time. You have to have a genuine reaction. Supercruise 63 says, I was a lifeguard a long time ago and had similar circumstances. Pretty cool, but had to be careful. Yeah. So the trick that I do is real simple. My camera is not on level with my eyes. If I were to put a camera someplace level with my eyes, it would be in this direction here. Like the level with my eyes is right there. That's where the camera would be. But instead I have the camera up. It's 6 inches to a foot positioned above my head and positioned far enough away so that I am not too close to the screen. I've done that. But it's up above and pointed down because it partly hides my weight. It's a weird deal, but a lot of times if you see people in movies or on TV or presenters and stuff like that, their head's a little large. It's common in the artistic world when you get to acting and stuff on movies and TV, for your head to be a little bit larger, a little bit larger than the average head compared to the body. I don't know why that is, but that's the way it is. And so by putting my camera up there, it also, because my head is now closer to the camera visually than the rest of me, it gives a slight impression that I have a head that is a little bit larger for my body. That's on purpose. But again, the way I've seen ladies use it, really, is to show off cleavage. And let us be real. The market that we're talking about here is men who want to think of you as a girlfriend. There is some technology involved here as well, in addition to where you do camera placement. I would strongly suggest a boom microphone like mine. You can't see it all, but a boom microphone like mine. It will sound better than the microphones that a lot of you are using that's in a headset or an earpiece or something like that. What mic you use is kind of up to you. Mine's a little older. I suggest a microphone that's USB for most computers. Simple USB microphone. It's a microphone whose sound is tailored so that it's picking up this part of the mic more than anywhere else. It's a directional microphone. What that does is it keeps things like the sound of a fan that I have over here blowing. It should muffle that to some extent. It will, if you run it through a certain level of processing like I do, a little bit of processing, you can get your voice to come out a little more bass for men, which is a bigger deal than you'd think. But it'll pick up the sound, and it'll sound better than what you've got. If you can't get a boom mic, you might also experiment with lapel microphones. I have not yet experimented with one. I've been thinking about getting one. that's well reviewed and trying it just to see. But this is very good because it'll muffle other sounds. Sometimes you will hear the echo because I'm not in a soundproof studio. Sometimes you will hear a little bit of echo with my voice, but not too much because it is directional. It's just picking up this part of where it's at. Cyndi Lauper said as much, let's see, in the film Vibes, Goldblum, don't you have a dress that isn't cut down to mid-bosom? Lauper, I dress like Macy's. You got to show off the goods. Yeah. Sorry, ladies, that's just the way it is. You can be overweight. That doesn't matter. I've seen lots and lots of overweight women. It's not a question of weight and stuff like that. It isn't even necessarily a question of your innate physical beauty. I've seen lots of reactors because, again, this is men who want to think of you and boys who want to think of you as a girlfriend. So they like to see the cleavage. What they really are getting into is your genuine reaction. If your reaction isn't genuine, if you can't get one up, don't do it. Just don't. They're reacting to your reaction and wanting to think of you as a girlfriend. So having your camera up high, even higher than I have it here. I have it less high than I'd like. I'd like to have it up about there. But I can't because my poor man's teleprompter actually sits behind my camera on a very large screen, but the screen isn't high enough. Maybe someday I'll get in there and just raise the screen. I don't know. But you definitely want something good for sound. You also want a good camera. I strongly suggest you do not use the camera that comes on your laptop. Use an external camera like the one that I'm using. It's a camera that's now you can't sell. It's now so old that you can't sell it. But you want one that will do at least 1080p at 60 frames per second. That is the bare minimum. If you can find one that'll do 1080p in or 4K in 60 frames per second, you're actually thinking about the future. That's coming up. 4K. We've got 4K videos on YouTube now. You can't see it in 4K on your handheld, but you can in a web browser. So 4K videos, at some point I'm going to have to upgrade my cam so that it's doing 4K at 60 frames per second. But you want a camera that can do that, at least that. Fortunately, the barrier for entry on this is not too expensive. You can get a light set, just a beginner's light set, a green screen. The software you use is all free. And you can get all of that, microphone and camera for probably under $200. I've been trying to get together a list, an Amazon list that includes everything that I currently use, or if it's not available, something that is current or better. Just so you can see, the barrier entry here is really pretty small. If you want to get started on it without all that stuff, you can certainly just use your camera from your computer and a headset that you're with a mic on it. Lots and lots of reactors do that. But I think if you do what I'm talking about, it will probably help you as a reactor. Super63 says, was very tempting to have bikini-clad girls wanting to share themselves, but lack of self-control could be dangerous legally, to say the least. That was part of the reason that I never took advantage of those girls, even though they were throwing themselves at me. I mean, A, they were minors, but B, I found the experience weird. I did not know what to make of them or what to do with them. They just were there all the time. For the length of that play, about 3 weeks or so, they were just there constantly. And it kind of freaked me out. The best thing I can say about it is, again, I kind of know a little tiny bit of what celebrities get every day. 24/7, 365. It's horrifying. Still waiting on how to build a home studio. Shadow Man, let me know of a reasonably priced green screen. There are all kinds of them out there. I have the cheapest ones. I really do. You don't have to go crazy with this stuff. So, software-wise, I tie all of this into free software called, where the hell did I have my mouse now? Make sure I've got okay. Into a software it's free software called Open Broadcast Software. I believe I have a link to it below. If I don't, I'll put one in there before I'm done. I record everything with open broadcast software. It's called OBS, including my pre-recorded videos. I'm not saying that that's how you need to do it. I just find it useful to do it that way. Again, it's free and open source software. You don't have to pay money for it. And anytime I do editing, if I have to edit something, I'll record the video with open broadcast software. But then if I need to do any editing, I'll use OpenShot Video Editor. And I think I probably forgot to put the link to it, but I will after this is over. It is a software that has a learning curve, and it's not necessarily for everyone. But it is free and open source. You don't have to pay for it. And so if I'm going to do something, editing-wise with a video, it's easiest for me with OpenShot. But there are all kinds of other things out there. I have a computer now that has a very good GPU, and it would speed up any renderings that I had to do to turn those into a video file out of that software. It would be better if I had some software that knew how to take advantage of my GPU for rendering, because it would take much longer. Typically, if I'm going to render something a half an hour long, it could take an hour and a half to render it. That's really good compared to what I used to do, but it still could be better, and part of that's my software. But if you want something that is free, that will do a lot of advanced things, does have something of a learning curve, it is OpenShot Video Editor. Okay. Got to talk about physical appearance because it does matter to some extent. Weight is not so much an issue. I mean, look at Mecha Random 42. She's not a reactor, but she's somebody that's big in the fantasy space. Look at what she wears. Look at the angle of her camera. Look at what parts of her body are routinely exposed. These are conscious choices she makes. You can't do this consistently having the same type of thing, showing the same body parts. And she is a bit overweight, but it doesn't matter because she's having genuine videos, and she says a lot of things that fans want to hear. That's her market, is fans that want to hear specific things about what she's saying about, things doing Star Trek or science fiction and stuff like that. But she's genuine. That is really important. But physical appearance is less important than you think. I have at least 3 reactors that I watch who are, overweight, don't spend any time on their makeup, don't spend any time on their clothing, and they're still engaging. The biggest thing is having a genuine reaction. But yes, drop of truth, makeup, absolutely. Makeup and clothing seem to go together. Women, if you're doing what I am with the lighting I am, you will not be able to get away without using makeup. I can get away because I'm a guy. You, on the other hand, are going to have to make yourself up. You're going to have to make yourself up decent. Whatever makeup you wear, it's got to look good. It can't be overpoweringly crazy. It can't be too much. Best person I can point you to is that does her makeup well, and she's done makeup videos showing what she does and how she does. Why am I blanking on her name now? She's only one of the YouTubers I've been watching since forever. Singer. God, why am I blanking on her name now? It'll come to me eventually. But she's a good example when I think of her name. She's a good example of somebody who does makeup very well for YouTube. So ladies, you're probably going to have to wear makeup. What you wear is going to be to some extent influenced by what kind of makeup you have, is going to be somewhat influenced by your clothing. There are 2 or 3 basic types of reactors on YouTube in terms of the way that they present themselves. One of the ones that I really like is when they dress up a little more formally, a little more demurely. That's probably just me, but when ladies are making an effort to look like ladies, I kind of appreciate that. If you're younger, hard to say. But to be honest, with clothing, the biggest thing that I've seen women do is showing off their cleavage. Just the way it is. And you probably would do well if you're comfortable with that. Because it all is a question about comfort. You have to be comfortable so that your viewer is comfortable. You have to know what more or less kind of the age range that you're aiming at and present yourself accordingly. But if you're comfortable with it, clothes that show off your cleavage are not bad. It's all about comfort. Now, in terms of some theatrics, being genuine, as I said, is very, very important with the reaction videos. The viewers come to see your reaction. They want to see you like what they like and dislike what they dislike. That means that regardless of what they want, regardless of what they're looking for, whether it's you liking or being bad, you're going to have to trust your own judgment that your reaction will probably be the same as theirs. When I'm seeing Star Wars reactions, their reactions are exactly the same reactions that I had watching it for the first time in the theater. There's a couple that didn't know Darth Vader. So they're always like, what the frack? Or when Luke, anybody that hasn't watched it, and I guess I won't spoil it for you because this is a shocking moment for everybody that's ever watched it. But there's something physically that happens to Luke in Empire Strikes Back that every single person that I watched did not know was coming. And they went, oh my God, what the hell just happened? So they tend to have reactions that are common because they're the reactions that everybody's always had to Star Wars. But being genuine, very, 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 very important to be genuine. The trick is, these reactors are women, the ones that I watch are women that, best way to describe it is they wear their heart on a sleeve, and they're not quiet. When they have a reaction, they can occasionally scream. I've seen them react to like Alien, just freak out completely and have to muffle the sound when they're editing so that it doesn't, shriek when you're listening to it on a headset. But the reaction has to be genuine and it has to be large. You can't have a small reaction. It needs to be large enough to be genuine on a screen this size. You have to imagine that it's possible that somebody's watching you on a 4K screen. So keep in mind that your reactions have to be genuine, but they also have to be large enough to be seen and to be appreciated. That doesn't mean you're acting. It doesn't mean you're acting at all. It just means that whatever reaction you're having, you're allowing yourself to be a little bigger about it. If something bad happens, and boy, there's a couple of bad things that happen in Star Wars. If you're having an emotional reaction, we're like, oh my God, I can't believe, oh no, and then you start crying, that's fine, as long as legitimately crying. If you're making it up, your body language will give you away instantly. There is one tell that you cannot control. If you're actually crying, it gets in your sinuses and your nose runs a little bit. If you're acting, that don't happen. That's that one single tell. And body language is something that people don't necessarily know, but they know how they move. They are used to seeing other people move in a certain way. And if you're faking it, especially in a reaction video, they will usually know. And that will turn them off. They want to see a legitimate, genuine reaction that is just a little bigger. If you're going to cry, you start crying and, oh my God, I've got to get a tissue, and like that. If you're going to be surprised, being really taken aback, it's fine to allow yourself to do that. It's the best way I can describe this. It's not acting. It's you having a genuine reaction, but you allowing yourself to be just a little bit bigger with it. You wouldn't necessarily say, oh my God, that's stupid, if you're sitting in a movie theater. But it's okay to say it if you're doing a reaction. You can have all kinds of off-the-cuff statements that you might want to make, predictions about what you're about to see that may or may not come true, because the people who are watching you have already seen this movie. They're coming so that they can live vicariously through you as a girlfriend watching these videos and having roughly the same reaction that they did. So it needs to be genuine. It needs to be a little bigger, but don't act. Don't try to fake any reaction. Just do it and make it a little bit bigger. Now, I can't do that. I wish I could. Because there's a space for reactors right now, and I've never been good at it. I've tried it a couple of times. I don't wear my heart on the sleeve enough. and I've seen too many movies and TV shows so that when I see one now, it's usually really predictable for me. So I just can't do it. I don't wear my heart on the sleeve in the right way. But women tend to have a little more of their heart on the sleeve in general. Sorry, the woke. And so it may be a little easier for you to have the slightly bigger reaction than you need to have. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. It needs to be genuine, but it needs to be a little bit bigger than you would usually have. Drop 2 says, I get tired very quickly of reviewers spewing vitriol all the time. I enjoy a critical drinker since he mixes it up, and he's a successful writer, Will Jordan. Yeah, and he writes everything he's got, so he's way more clever and amusing than I could be. In terms of how he reviews films, I like them. They're kind of intelligent reviews. So, ladies doing this, that is my general thing. Oh, one other thing about makeup. I've seen a million times where women are having emotional reactions to Star Wars in various movies and places. And it will tend to make them cry in various places, sometimes places that men don't expect it to. And they always handle their makeup the same way. They apparently weren't expecting to cry at something, and so they always are dabbing their makeup under their eyes to make sure it doesn't get smeared. It's okay to let your makeup get smeared if you're having an emotional reaction where you cry. That's fine. Do your makeup so that it will get messy if you cry. If you've got 3 movies or TV shows that you're reacting to in a given day, because I know the really successful reactors have something coming out every day with a different, TV show or movie. If you're doing a bunch of them, that means that you're going to be fixing your makeup from time to time. But I can tell you that as a viewer, if you have a reaction that causes you to cry and gets your makeup a little messed up, as a viewer watching this, somebody who is looking at it from the perspective, okay, this could be my girlfriend, it's okay to have that reaction. Women crying sort of automatically triggers a defensive mechanism in men. We don't like to see that for the most part. So with you crying, it is actually creating a very, very sympathetic reaction in your male viewer. And that is your target demographic. And so if you're crying, the male viewer is going to be like, oh, I want to hold her, I want to help her. It's going to create this defensive reaction in heterosexual men. That's the way it is. I'm sure the woke won't like this little piece of information, but that's true. That is what's happening. I have some other suggestions for reactors. There are a lot of them who are reacting to Star Wars movies. There are a lot of them who are reacting to Indiana Jones, Marvel movies to some extent, Aliens. I've seen one for Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And that should be higher. But there are some things that you could think about watching that nobody seems to be doing right now, and I think would be good for watching. Drop 2 says there are some great female producers like Lady Gravenstar, who does Nerdrotic. Oh, yeah. No question. All I'm doing is telling you what I see when I'm watching these and what my critical theatrical eye tends to see. But there are some things that you ladies could be reviewing that nobody seems to be doing. You need to go backwards in time a little farther. It'd be great if we saw somebody react to 1956's Forbidden Planet, 2001, A Space Odyssey, and if you don't get it, don't worry. I gave the thing a very bad review myself because Harlan Ellison and I think the same thing. It's a special effects demo reel. And Harlan Ellison was told that from one of the co-writers, Arthur C. Clarke. If it seems to have bigger meaning for you, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But for me, if you're afraid, you've heard it's this amazing movie that's, spiritually transformational. If you're afraid that you won't have that reaction to it and people won't like it, don't worry. You can have a genuine reaction where you're like, what in the hell is going on? Why is this taking so long? That's fine to have that reaction because most people have those. Super Cruise 63 says, funny, my favorite Star Wars movie was Empire, and Star Trek was Wrath of Khan. Both part twos wish there was more sequels that could say the same. Yeah. The Star Wars ones went real well in terms of it being better from Star Wars to Empire, not so much going from Empire to Jedi. And the other ones, well, prequel trilogy, just watch Mr. Plinkett's reviews. He says everything that I've ever said about how they're terrible and self-indulgent movies. But other films you could watch if you're doing reactions, you can do War of the Worlds from 1953. That's really great. This Island Earth from 1953. 1951's The Day the Earth Stood Still. Drop Truth says he enjoyed Empire, prefers Star Trek the Motion Picture, gave up on Star Trek films after Wrath of Khan. I think Wrath of Khan is probably the best one. I have an interest in Star Trek the Motion Picture, the director's edition. Not so much the released one, but the director's edition I prefer very much. Another thing that you can watch as a reactor is the Planet of the Apes movies that started in 1968. That's Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and Battle for the Planet of the Apes. In that order is what you should watch them. You need to watch some Star Trek in the movies. I would certainly suggest, if you watch no other Star Trek movie, you watch Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. It is, in my opinion, the best Star Trek movie. I think it holds up the best from an age perspective. The special effects are still good. The story is more or less timeless, which when Star Trek is doing it, they are doing it right with that respect. You can get engaged in that film. I don't think that the special effects and sets and stuff are so dated that you can't get into it. So I think it's a good one to watch for the Star Trek movies. If you want to watch Star Trek the Motion Picture as a complete difference in terms of the tone and everything about the films is totally different, but they are both valid Star Trek movies. If you want to watch Star Trek the Motion Picture, that's great. Just be aware most people find it long and boring in places, and it's okay for you to have that reaction. If you don't, if you think it's the bee's knees, that's great. There's lots of people who think that too, and no potential boyfriend type, which is your market, is going to come and say, well, no, it was awful and terrible and I'm not going to watch you. Because they've heard from people who like that movie. So it's okay to have that reaction too. Reaction just needs to be genuine. Let me put a pin in that question here, SuperGuru63. I want to get through some of the stuff that people should watch. You should also watch some TV. Now, on television, and somebody asked about this, about what you could watch from the original series. You need to watch Star Trek, the original series episode, The City on the Edge of Forever by Harlan Ellison. It is episode 21 of season 1. Yes, that's right. It was episode 28 of a 30-episode season. That's what they all did back then. It is the next to the last episode of season 1. It is considered among the best, if not the best, episode in all of the Star Trek franchise. The technology isn't present as much. There's 10 minutes. You got the teaser and a few minutes of the episode on the bridge, and then they're down on a planet, which may look a little dated to you for about 10 minutes. And the rest of the film takes place, it's time travel. The rest of the film takes place in the 1930s past. It is a 1930s period piece. So there's not all this technology that you think looks dated and breaks you out of the moment. It's 1930s. It looks like the 1930s. It's made to look like the 1930s. And that's something that historically is accurate, more or less. So you can watch it, and it's not like science fiction in the 1960s, where if you're going to create a series, everything gets created from scratch. The sets, the locations, the props, everything is being made from scratch. But when you're doing a period piece, these studios had lots of backlots that looked like New York City in 1938. They have lots of costumes that come from that period because they've made lots of movies and they've used this stuff over and over. They have sets already, sitting in storage somewhere that you can use for these settings. So it looks pretty good. It looks accurate for the time period. So being a a period piece, it doesn't drag you out of the episode with some of the dated parts of it. By the way, if this episode does not give you the feels, then you have been conditioned by a lifetime of crappy movies and TV to be dead inside. This episode is one where your heart and your head will love you for the rest of your life. Now, if you want to watch some TV to get an idea, of perspective, watch any third season episode of Lost in Space, because that was happening at the same time as Star Trek. Watch 1 or 2 episodes of that, just so you can see. That was a 5-year-long popular TV show. Star Trek was never that popular. But if you compare the two, the difference is night and day. And if you think, okay, Lost in Space was what was popular, and what they were doing on TV, that's what was popular, you can look over at Star Trek and say, geez, Star Trek's nothing like that. That's what Star Trek did in the 1960s. It was totally groundbreaking. So you watch some of that for, just so that you've got the perspective. You can watch any Universal horror film. I recommend 1931's Frankenstein and 1931's Dracula. You can watch all of that stuff and be relatively safe. Science fiction fans tend to have watched it. Definitely recommend Forbidden Planet. A very intelligent film. You may find stuff dated. I certainly do. But the story is so good that it really holds up and you can get engaged in it. When you're stealing from William Shakespeare, what do you expect? Supercrude63 asks, are there any movies you or all wish were made into a sequel to? For me, it was a show called Spawn. Boy, one that they haven't done a sequel to. I just want them to finish up Firefly. If you're going to go back and do something, finish Firefly for me. Do 5 years of Firefly. Drop 2 says Terminator 2 and Aliens were great sequels. Yes, they were, absolutely. Shadow Man says, wow, complete internet outrage in back. Spectrum, what? Oh, internet outage, you're back? Huh. Well, I have Spectrum, but it's in a completely different part of the country. I hope it doesn't go to hell soon. Shadow Man says, I will DM you my recommendations on Twitter. They're regarding green screen. Okay. Yeah, feel free. That's about it. I like these reactors. I think there's some theatrical things that if you're in the mind to do reactions, you could do and help you. There's things that I've done and I've used that, I should do that thing about having a home studio and putting up green screens soon. I should really do that soon. If I can get it done, I will create a list on Amazon that shows you what I have or something very close to it, and how the barrier to entry for this is actually very, very low. And the returns are potentially gigantic. This is definitely a market that's running right now on YouTube. You can find these guys all over the place with reactions that date back 3 months, some that were last week, some that were yesterday. Just search on YouTube for something like Star Trek reaction. Or not Star Trek, Star Wars. Star Wars reaction. There are a ton of people who started this by watching the first episode, Star Wars A New Hope, and going, that was amazing. I'm amazed that I don't have, that I haven't watched this before. I don't know why I haven't watched it before. I mean, it's been out there for my entire life. Why have I not watched this before? And then they get into the rest of it. And then they go, this is good. Everybody thinks Indiana Jones is great. Let's try that. Oh, my God, that first movie is great. Why have I not watched this in my life? Or the second one usually comes out, wow, that movie kind of sucked. I wish I hadn't seen that. But then they come back for the third one and go, wow, this is better than the first one. So they get into other, they watch Aliens, other franchises. There's somebody who'd been going through a male reactor, who'd been going through every single Marvel movie. Holy crap. Another thing you can do with these if you're interested in being a reactor is you are limited by how much time you can put on a film on YouTube. It'll get caught by any number of different filters, and they can pull it down, and often do. The Gallifrey Gals had a huge percentage of their Star Trek The Next Generation reactions pulled. And if you look at their current Star Trek The Next Generation reactions, you can see that they are doing heavy things to the video and the audio of the episode they're reacting to so that it doesn't get killed, because they're killing it all the time. Paramount's nasty. I'm sorry, CBS is nasty about that. So you're limited on YouTube by time. You have to be careful. And I don't know what the time is now. You'd have to look it up. Whatever fair use time is. You're limited on time, so you have to be careful about what you edit on YouTube. You know, it has to be the best parts. It has to be the biggest moments in the film with your reaction to them. It needs to be the biggest moments in the film, your reaction to them. If you have a funny aside, you know, if you say something amusing, and by the way, it's great to be totally self-depreciating. You can say, there's one girl who was doing a reaction of Star Wars Episode 3, and in the middle of the reaction, she spilled something on her shirt. And she just looks at the camera and says, I can't believe I just spilled this. And now you can see, what am I? Am I an adult? I'm such a klutz. Okay, I'm just going to power through it and leave it there. You can be totally depreciating about stuff like that. You know, if something funny happens, keep it in the edit. But do be careful that you have to leave only a certain amount of footage from the movie. So it gets a little dicey, I think, when you're editing. But, you know, you have to be careful about that. Well, what you can do is put the entire reaction up on Patreon or Subscribe. I don't think Subscribestar does it, but you can put the entire 2 hours, you know, of something that you reacted to as something that the viewer has to pay for. So there's not only money in it for being on YouTube, there's money in it for putting a full 2-hour reaction up. And I can't cost justify paying those. But people are. You know, these ladies are making a fair amount of money at this. And as I said, the market is there. I only became aware of it within the last couple of weeks or so, that there was this giant market of people reacting to stuff. Start with Star Wars A New Hope if you haven't seen it. Just start there. It'll get you views. There are people who have tens of thousands of subscribers that they didn't have before they started doing these reactions, and hundreds of thousands of views. You know, some of these are what you got to remember again is it has to be a genuine reaction. As long as you're genuine, people are going to watch. If you're not being genuine, and as long as you're expressive, as long as you're able to express yourself, and if you have a reaction, allow it to be just a little bigger. You know, again, it's not acting. You have to have this reaction naturally, but it needs to be just a little bit bigger than you might have if you were watching it in a theater. You know, you'd probably be more quiet. It needs to be a little bit bigger than that. But don't act. Don't act. People will catch on. You know, you have to be a very good actor and be able to do very specific body language stuff for you to be able to act as a reactor. I suspect that there are some ladies who do it. But I watch for things like if they're crying, is their nose starting to run a little bit, you know, if somebody's having a reaction and they're doing a lot of this, because a lot of times these ladies will talk about the movie afterwards, and it'll be done, and they'll say, here's what I think about this film as a whole. It made me feel like this. But if they're going like this, that means if they're saying they like it and they're going like this, it probably means they didn't. This is kind of okay, well, I liked the movie. I thought it was okay. Same thing when they're doing something like this. This is padding. It happens when you may be fabricating an answer. If you're being questioned, you may be fabricating an answer because you're going, okay, I need to reassure myself. And the same thing happens when they're talking about the movies. If they're going like this, I really liked this movie. It made me feel like this at this point, made me feel like that at that point. I think it's a really good movie. And they're sitting here like this with their hands. They're probably lying. They probably didn't like it. And you may not notice it, but average viewer will see that something's wrong. It doesn't feel right. So I watch for stuff like that. And if I find out that you're an actor, I turn off and I will badmouth you to my heart's content on social media. I do not suffer actors on YouTube very well. Someone who is real on YouTube is being genuine, whether they get the views or not. And when you act, there are a lot of what I call outrage reviewers. People who discovered with Star Wars The Last Jedi that people like to be outraged about stuff that they really dislike. And they are outrage reviewers, and a lot of them are actors. They will come on and just be outraged. They'll find something that fans are outraged about today, and they'll come on and make videos that are showing their outrage. But they're actors, just complete actors. They're just saying, "Oh, this is a market I can get into." And I'm sure the same thing has happened with these reactor market. But by God, if you're female and you want to try this, if you're capable of, making those slightly bigger reactions, then go for it. There is a ton of people doing it, and it seems to be really, really popular. I can't do it because I'm not capable of wearing my heart on my sleeve like that. But if you are, it is a giant market, and there's real money in it. And the younger you are, the better, because if this continues as a trend, you will probably be able to keep at it for 10 to 15 years. If you're older, not so much. There really is this, hard line where 30 is too much. After 30, you're done. So if you're younger than that, you have a good chance of having some success. If you're reasonably attractive, and I say reasonably because you don't have to be beautiful at all. If you're reasonably attractive, even if you're overweight, then you will get a following. As long as you're genuine, as long as you can make that reaction just a little bit bigger, no acting. That doesn't work well. Hey, Shadow Man, I assume you're leaving, so cheers. Oh, yeah, okay. Let's see. 60 Super Cruise series says another series that went 4 years at the same time as Star Trek, was Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. The flying sub was epic. R.I.P. Irwin Allen, who brought us some great sci-fi shows. Yeah, that's another one you could watch. You can watch some other TV shows around that same time period. Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea was pretty good. It was a pretty good show. But again, if you look at that compared to Star Trek, you can still see where Star Trek, the original series, was kind of groundbreaking. Yeah, Shadow Man, I missed where that you're not leaving Envy. Superguru 63 says, I wish they would bring back Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea with today's special effects. Just leave the woke out of it. Yeah, I don't know if you can do anything where the woke aren't involved anymore. You guys are such a pain in the ass. You woke. You're just such a pain in the ass. I'm sorry for the internet because it got you where you are today. That's what I had to say about Reactors. Kind of long, but I kind of felt like I had to get it out of my system because I'm now watching all of these guys. And as a viewer, some of my viewers, you may like watching them too. I would, again, point you to just do Star Wars reaction on YouTube. Search for those fields. You will get back all kinds of them. You may like guys. There's a couple of them that I like, but again, they tend to be very intellectual about it. They're not having a reaction so much as, wow, this is good what they're doing with this, lighting and the camera work. I really like the use of shadows and stuff like that. They'll say things like that, but they aren't having an emotional reaction to it. But you may like them. I don't know. I'm not sure who their market is. And there are tons and tons and tons of women with a wide range of ages that, again, seems to stop at about age 30. Not that I don't think an older woman couldn't do it. You probably you have a little bit of appearance working against you. There's just no way to say it. Hollywood itself chews up and spits out women at about age 30. It's just that simple. People don't want to watch older women. They don't write roles for older women. It's just life. I'd do better if I was younger. I'm sure of it. But if you're older, if you're reasonably attractive, you haven't completely lost your figure, let yourself go completely, can wear makeup that maybe makes you look a little bit younger, you probably have a good shot still. But that 30 years old is largely a hard limit because people over that, nobody wants to watch. It's unfortunate, but it's true. So if you're looking to get into that market, teen, tween even, if basically puberty on to about 30, you can get people to watch you. And again, I think they're trying to think of you as a girlfriend. I've seen women who are married that still work, right? You can see the ring on their finger, but it still works for it. And the biggest thing, really, there's a big thing. Don't let your boyfriend or husband be seen on screen. Don't do that. That is instant death. Because your viewer wants to think of you as a girlfriend. The moment that they know you're attached is a giant turnoff. It's death. Don't let your boyfriend or significant other be seen. I've seen it one time where it worked. There was a girl who was reacting to one of the Star Wars movies, I think she'd just gotten through episode 6, Return of the Jedi. And her boyfriend comes in. She says to him, "Hey, honey, I just finished this thing. You want to watch it again later?" Because she really liked the movie. And he says something about, yeah, and then you can kind of hear him in the background, but not very well. And then she says, "Wait a minute, you've never watched any of these, have you? You know, but don't let him be seen. That is death. That is just death." Let's see. Do I think internet will get censored even more than it is today? YouTube now inputs adverts into YouTube content. Bloody annoying. Yeah. Brave web browser, even if you're not using Brave, because I know that you have a problem with that drop of truth. Even if you're not using Brave, try to get the AdBlock Plus ad blocker. That'll do wonders for removing your ads if you're watching on a web browser. If you're watching on a handheld, which I do quite a lot, you're SOL. There's no way to stop those ads. And yes, they're getting to be really annoying. One of my friends told me about when he was watching a Tim Pool video, and there was a 40-minute unskippable ad prior to his video. 40 minutes and unskippable. So yes, they are being problems. In terms of BitTorrent, I always suggest transmission. Oh, I remember the girl with the makeup now. I remember her name, Emma Blackery. Ladies, if you want to make yourself up more or less like Emma Blackery, you couldn't go wrong. She does makeup tutorials if you want to see it. Because it's ladylike and slightly retro. I can't describe it very well. She does a thing with wings on her eyeliner that makes it look a little bit retro and at the same time a little bit more ladylike for me. The one thing I'd say, ladies, is with your makeup, don't be afraid to put it on in such a way that it will run if you cry. That will create a reaction in men that is knee-jerk white knighting, and it will help your view count. I'm sure of it. Again, don't fake crying. We can see that. It has to be a genuine reaction, but if your makeup gets running when you're crying, that's okay. Let's see. VPN tunnel with uTorrent. Yeah, that's a good one to use. Lots of VPN things out there. I always want to get a VPN service that can make me decide what country I seem to be coming from, because I like to watch Doctor Who. It uses IP addresses to block you out if it knows you're in a block that belongs to the United States. When you get a VPN provider who can mask you looking like they're coming from England, Great Britain, then you can watch BBC's TV shows. So, speaking of TV shows, Speaker 63, have I watched the rest of Stargo? You get a kick out of the last episode? No, I haven't. I've been too much going on a binge with these damn reactors. You will not believe how many of them I have watched in the last 48 hours or so. Just nothing but reactors. It's been a very good break from having to keep track of every single last thing that's been going on with politics. But free VPNs, a good thing to use. VPNs are always a good thing to use. I always suggest it, unless it slows you down so badly that you can't deal with it, because the traffic does move around more in a VPN. Oh, let me pop back to a thing like that. And it's 11:30. Wow, I actually went really long with that. People who are coming to me for talk about current events, sorry. This was a Star Trek and science fiction night. And I just felt I had to say something about those reactors. I have been watching them. They've been a guilty pleasure since forever. But having watched so many of them now with a critical theatrical eye, I can look and see, okay, this is a conscious choice that people are consistently making, like showing cleavage, because it entices their market, which are men who want to think of you as a girlfriend. So, but no, I will get to Stargirl sometime freaking soon. I know I keep saying that, but I'm going to get to it. Even the outrage reviewers. I don't watch reviews of stuff that I'm going to watch because I may talk about it and I don't want my opinions sullied by somebody else's. But I have seen the names of videos on people who are reviewing Stargirl, and even the outrage reviewers have good things to say about the tail end of that. So yeah, I know I need to watch it. Star Trek Discovery Season 3 trailer reaction. Yeah, well, my reaction to Star Trek Discovery, as long as I have it. My reaction to the Star Trek Discovery trailer was the same thing that I had when I look at, I made a video for it. It's Star Trek Andromeda. If you're familiar with Gene Roddenberry's work, well, not his work so much, had his name on it, but it was very, very loosely based on anything that he did. There was a TV series called Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda, and the premise of this was there's a ship, the Andromeda Ascendant, and it has by accident gotten pulled into the event horizon of a black hole, where it then stays for several hundred years, and then it is brought back out. And when it's brought back out into the regular world, what's happened is the galactic government, intergalactic government in that case, that had been going for thousands of years had fallen. And so this ship's job was to go around and find people to sign up for their new galactic government that they were going to have. Well, Star Trek Discovery has taken that exact premise. The Discovery has gone 800, 1,000 years in the future, I've forgotten, and the Federation has fallen, and it's now the Discovery's job to get people put back together so they can have another Federation. I am supremely disinterested. I am supremely disinterested. I probably won't watch it. I don't know. I might watch the first episode or two. Sure not paying for it. I've never liked the show at all. So I can't say that. I mean, I haven't liked the Star Trek Discovery at all, period. And seeing this, they're ripping off another Roddenberry property, and they probably don't know it. They probably think that this is something really, really, noteworthy and new. Guess what, guys? You can go back to Buck Rogers, or in the books where he was a serious character, Armageddon 2416 or something like that. But you go back to that original novel. You're seeing the exact same thing in the turn of the freaking 20th century. This is not a new idea. I am not interested in that. It tramps all over preceding Star Trek canon, which has the Federation apparently in perfectly good condition by that era. By that era, a lot of the Federation's exploration appears to have gone into time travel because they've basically perfected it in that era. And there have been time travelers from that general era, and the Federation was fine. So it's tramping all over that. I don't like that very much. I just don't like the fact that I don't see anything original here at all. It's the problem with most science fiction. I've been watching it for so long and reading it for so long that very little comes across to me as new or original. And here with Star Trek Discovery, we're just saying, okay, let's go and take another Roddenberry thing and do it with better special effects and probably soap opera the frack out of it. Drop Truth says it was 930 years. I think that's what, I can't quite see the, 930 years, but who cares? Yeah, I don't care at all. I couldn't care less about this stuff that's made for the woke because I'm not among them. It really seems to be aimed at them, and I don't like it. I haven't ever liked it. They've screwed it up royally with that IP, that intellectual property. Thank you, Alex Kurtzman. Time to go back in time to 2008 or 9 and stop Paramount from hiring you. Where's the Guardian of Forever when you need it? But STD has a transgender character. They forgot about Odo in Deep Space Nine, and many other episodes stem from Next Generation. They aren't doing anything new here. They're just presenting it a little bit differently for the woke, who are generally nihilists that can't see a good future, they can't imagine it. And they're people who will take these little virtue signaling things like having a transgender character and they'll go, oh, good, transgender character, and pat themselves on the back for some reason. Why they do that, I don't understand. They don't appear to be very... the woke do not appear to have any level of... there's nothing that they like. There's just nothing they like. Everything in the world is terrible. And when you make Star Trek into that, I've said it a million times. I have a video about it. Star Trek as a property, as an intellectual property, succeeds because it is different in one respect from all other science fiction. And that is, it has always been an optimistic future. It is a future up until Kurtzman took over that I would like to live in. Kurtzman's future I don't want to live in. I just don't. And I don't know of anybody else who does. And it's unlike prior Star Trek, which influenced generation or two of scientists and engineers to build the world that we see around us. Star Trek inspired a lot of it. But to build the technological world we see around us was largely inspired by Star Trek. And this Kurtzman Star Trek doesn't inspire anyone. It's just bleh. It is the first time that Star Trek appears to have been put on the air, or for streaming, when it was only partially done for reasons that have to do with nostalgia. It was partly made, I'm sure, because people were by that time having nostalgia for Star Trek. It hadn't been even on the big screen for years. And so I'm sure some of that started out doing that way, but it quickly became something that the average fan doesn't want to see. And it became something only the woke want to see. And I don't know that's enough to keep them a real viewership. I don't know. Let's see. Drop 2 says, how woke is sufficiently woke? Leave them alone and they'll eat their own. Yeah. Like I say, I've had more than one person go off and talk about how I was a racist, homophobic, satanic, well, not satanic, but whatever. They'll go off and I don't care. In part because it's impossible for me to care about any particularly negative, really negative feedback. When you're giving me feedback that says, hey, you're like Jeanette did, when you say, oh, your bridge background noise is too loud, I'm like, okay, I'll listen to that and turn the level down. But when they're just being a-holes, when they're accusing me of sexism, racism, homophobia, being a fascist, being a Trump supporter, blah, 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 which they do. Even if you're talking about Star Trek, I just ignore it. Like you say, if I have anything to say, if they really keep at it, I will fight them by saying something like, "Okay, that's nice, honey bunch. Go out and play in the front yard. The adults are talking, or go play in the backyard. The adults are talking, sonny boy." Be condescending to them, and at the same time, saying something that pushes them out of the conversation. And if they try to get back in, you say, oh, that's nice, kiddo. Why don't you go and play? Just keep saying it. Eventually, they'll get tired and drift away. Don't engage them. Just say, that's nice. The adults are playing. Why don't you go and play in the backyard? Be at the same time, be condescending and dismissive. Best way to deal with them at all if you must. But how woke is sufficiently woke? Who the hell knows? All I know is, experimentally, in threads involving Star Trek and science fiction, Star Trek under Kurtzman in particular, I have thrown out something like, you're a leftist, aren't you? As just a complete side thing. Oh, and they will go off. And I think that's the target market for Star Trek under Kurtzman is the woke. I hope they're not enough to sustain an audience. I really hope so. But as Drop 2 says, if you leave them alone, they'll eat their own. Yeah, that's the other thing about the woke. You can't be woke enough, as he says, and you can say something that even the woke, if you're woke, and you say something that other woke don't find good, they'll be all over your back. They're impossible, just impossible to get away from anymore. Why my channel tends to be largely political and not science fiction anymore, because I've got things to say nobody else is. At the same time, you can't talk about science fiction or Star Trek without the woke going insane. Drop of Truth asks, can you remember the US TV space garbage collection series Quark? Yes, I do. I enjoyed it, but the British series Red Dwarf was superior. Yeah, Red Dwarf is awesome. Quark was a dumb little science fiction sitcom. Wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great. Dumb little science fiction sitcom with a laugh track. It's okay. Didn't run very long for a reason. It ran only a few episodes. Red Dwarf, if nobody's seen that, Reactors, this is your chance. Go back and watch some Red Dwarf. It's very funny. It's just very funny in general. And it's intelligent. There's a perfect example of where something can be funny in science fiction. Guys who are writing Star Trek Lower Decks, take note. Go and watch Red Dwarf. There is an example of where you can have an absolute idiot main character. Well, all the main characters being complete idiots, but being just good enough at their job that their spaceship keeps running. But blithering idiots for much of the rest of the thing. But at the same time, their plots are smart, right? They take a science fictional idea and they go with that. And they do it as a serious science fictional idea, but with these dolts blundering through the situation. There's where it can work, guys. But just this rapid fire, constant throwing out unfunny little quips and callbacks to other Star Trek is not funny. Go watch Red Dwarf. You can do something like that with them. Intelligent scripts played straight that are actually very funny. So yeah, Red Dwarf is a great show. Great show. Picked up a copy of the last episode that was aired, I don't know, a month, 2 months ago. I've forgotten, relatively recently. They seem to come out with new episodes every 10 or so years or so. I think the actors involved probably wouldn't do another series at this point, but they come out with a 2-hour TV movie, essentially, every 10 years or so, I guess. So I guess I'm going to have to wait until about 2030 for my next one, and by then the actors are going to be pretty old. Although they've managed to work in aging into their plots and stuff, so that works out really well. Oh, let me go back to one of my other backgrounds. So, yeah, the Red Dwarf is amazing. It's just a lot of fun. What time we got here? 10:47. Well, it looks like a decent enough time to drop off. My back isn't quite killing me yet. Give me another 30 minutes and I'd be dead. So, like I say, my advice for Reactors. And I'll go out and find another good one. Or some of them are rewatchable. Some of them are very rewatchable. Forgotten the name of the one. I'm not going to link to any of them, because if you want to watch them, it's easy enough to do. Just put, input Star Wars reaction, and you'll find hundreds of these guys. I suggest starting out with like a woman in her 20s to get started. If you don't have my psychology, where you're living through your sort of kids vicariously, then younger ones than you are, significantly younger, may turn out to be something that makes you a little uncomfortable. But when you get into the 20s, for me, and later 20s, you can see all kinds of reactors your age, and it won't make you feel weird if you're a man, a heterosexual man. But ladies, if you want to get in to this market, it is big right now. It is huge right now. I don't see it going away anytime immediately here, because there are so many science fiction fans who want to see what people think in modern day of seeing Star Wars or something for the first time. They want to think, see what that looks like. And because of the age range, millennials or later, there is some good chance that you may never have seen a Star Wars or Star Trek movie like Jeanette hasn't. Jeanette, if I don't know what you look like, I would say unless you're morbidly obese, if you can give a reaction, give it a shot. Because there's some good chance that you'll be successful with it. I've seen men and women doing it. I can just talk about the women because that's what I've seen and I've analyzed. Superguru 63 says Blake 7 was pretty funny too. It could be in places. Yeah, it wasn't a comedy per se, but it could be funny in places. You can work funny into almost anything. I mean, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, pretty serious movie, but at the same time, there's enough humor here and there that when the big thing happens, that if you haven't seen this movie and want to react to it, you should. I won't tell you what some of the big takeaways are out of that, but when they happen, they're shocking and they're sad. But the whole movie, oddly enough, is generally upbeat. So, well, it being about 10 minutes to midnight, that is close to 3 hours, and I took up most of it talking about reactors. Just a guilty pleasure of mine. It might be one of yours too. Give a few of them a chance. I wish I could remember some of the better ones. One I've been watching since forever is a YouTuber called Seska Says. She's reacted to a ton of stuff. She has a ton of things in her background. If you want to get started on something, watch her reactions to The Day of the Doctor, the 50th anniversary episode of Day of the Doctor, and her review, or her reaction rather, for An Adventure in Space and Time, which was also something that came out on the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who. And it's sort of a docudrama about how Doctor Who was originally made and the people involved in that. They're very different movies with very different feelings to them, and watching those two from Seska Says, Jessica of Seska Says, gives you a good example of the differences in reactions that you can see. And she's a good reactor, in terms of having what seemed to me certainly to be valid reactions, a genuine reaction, but at the same time being just a little bigger about it. Not a ton bigger, but just a little bigger. And you can see what she does. Seska Says. Good one to emulate. She also, excuse me, dresses a bit ladylike. She does something very interesting, and it's very conscious, you can tell. She'll wear things that can show her cleavage, but she'll adjust her hair just a little bit, so I think it's just a little bit more comfortable for her. But I've seen her repeatedly on screen paying attention to that, intentionally dressing a little bit more demurely with something that would show the cleavage just a little bit, but she's got long hair and she will look at the camera and move it. And she'll look at her monitor and move it from time to time so that it's in a spot that makes it, while she's showing her cleavage, makes it a little less and I think a little more comfortable for her. But she's a good one to emulate, a very good one to emulate. Yup, Dropper 2 says Blake 7 was created by Terry Nation, the guy that created the Daleks and wrote a lot of the Dalek stories, and had a job at one point as a story editor on Doctor Who and Classic Who. So, yeah. I guess that is all that I have to say about that. I would love to keep the conversation going, so please leave your comments, questions, and nasty remarks. I'll do my best to respond to you. So thanks for watching. That is all the time that we have today for this episode of Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.